Hello, everybody. What's going on? Today's show is going to be interesting. I'm going to be talking about what is cultural Christianity, um, because we live in a so-called Christian country, right? It was founded on Christianity, puritanical values, and all of that kind of good stuff. Hey, Joel, I see you out there. Um, Al Harding, I see you guys out there. Glad you can join. Hopefully, we'll get some more people in here in a minute. But I did want to kind of spotlight Mr. Tom Holland. He seems to be gaining a lot of uh, recognition, especially in the Christian community, for his being for cultural Christianity, even though he is an atheist. So Tom Holland is an atheist or an unbeliever, yet he admits that we get all of our morals, all of our good, values. Anything virtuous comes out of Christianity, according to his view. So I'm going to let him actually discuss it himself. So we'll give him a shot here. Check him out real quick.
The Christian church emerges like a kind of cuckoo in the imperial nest, because the emphasis on caring for those who are weak, those who are at the bottom of the pile, expresses itself through a radical new doctrine of charity, of giving. The rich give to the poor to store up treasure for themselves in heaven. This is not designed, as systems were in Greek cities or in Rome, as forms of patronage. This is a giving that is done because God wants it, and because the weak, the poor, the orphans, the widows, the old people, these have a dignity. And so when Constantine becomes emperor, when Constantine, the emperor, becomes a Christian, this kind of welfare state that exists within the Roman Empire is then given an imperial dignity as well. And this then enables, when the Roman Empire in the West crumbles away, the church endures and survives. And when Gibbon argues that Christianity sapped the will of the Romans, that it kind of corroded the foundations of the Roman state, he gets it exactly wrong. It is Christianity that enables what remains of Roman culture to survive into the future, but of course transformed and transmuted. And in a sense, the primal revolution consists of the way in which Paul and people like him, people proclaiming that this slave nailed to a cross is in some way coterminous with the one creator. This is the kind of the primal revolution. This is the primal earth shock. But further reverberations continue to ripple through history. And particularly the form that Christianity takes in the Latin West, where there is no emperor as there is in Constantinople. And so what happens in the Latin West in the early Middle Ages is that the church accrues a kind of growing sense of its own dignity. It emancipates itself from the idea that it is dependent on emperors, or more specifically on a particular empire. So that when in 410 Rome is sacked, and people who lament the passing of the old ways say that because we have abandoned the old gods, therefore the gods have abandoned Rome. Probably the most influential of the Latin fathers, Augustine, says no, we have the city of man, and that is ephemeral. it's bubbles on the flow of time. And he gives a word to this, cyculum. And the Latin word cyculum means the limit of living memory. So the flux, everything comes and it goes and it changes. And all of Roman power are merely winking bubbles on the flow of the cyculum. And he opposes to that the city of God, which is eternal and unchanging. And the only way that human beings can resist the flow of the cyculum is to secure a firm binding, bind themselves as closely as they can to this vision of unchanging eternity. And a binding in Latin is a religio. And it might be a sacrifice, it might be a festival, it might be a priesthood. But in the Christian world, where there can be only one religio comes to be, it comes to describe the process by which someone who particularly wants to consecrate him or herself to God, maybe as a monk, maybe as a nun, maybe as a hermit, that's what religio is. And so religio comes to be counterpointed to the flux of the cyculum. And in the 11th century, this is weaponized by radicals who in an earlier generation would have been described as heretics. And they want to apply the notion of reformatio, of remaking yourself, that is kind of fundamental to the Christian idea of the self, the idea that you can be baptized, that your sins can be washed away, that you can be born again, you can be cleansed anew, that you can be illuminated by the light of proper understanding, by the light of the Spirit. And they want to apply this to the dimension of the entire world. And to do this, they draw on ideas of the cyculum and of a church that should be properly consecrated to God. And so they want to wash off the grubby finger marks of kings and emperors who have been pouring at the sacral purity of the church as they see it. And so through a convulsive process, they separate the church from the fabric of the state as the various kingdoms and imperial entities that exist throughout the Latin West. And they do this by humbling kings. So Henry IV, the emperor, is humiliatingly reduced to waiting outside the Pope's castle. They inspire ideologically motivated warriors to travel to the ends of the earth in the cause of consecrating the earth to this vision of purity and liberty. Those are the Crusades. They mandate lawyers to fashion entire frameworks of international law that can, in a sense, consecrate the church as the first modern state, a state that lays claim to its own sovereignty, that enshrines the legal system of the church as the ultimate source of recall for people across everywhere in Christendom, and the Pope himself at the head of it.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, you guys may want to check out that whole video. I can't play the whole thing. I'll probably get knocked off of YouTube and the stream will end. But he just goes on to the history all the way up. So basically tracking Christianity, to today's world that we live in, especially here in America, as we're going to discuss it. But, I've watched a lot of him lately, and a lot of Christian podcasts talk about Tom Holland and how even he admits that Christianity is the foundation of our virtues and morals and ethics, not atheism, not unbelief, not agnosticism. That has nothing to do with morals. It has nothing to offer. The only positive thing that is going to come out in this country is going to be on account of Christian dogma, Christian doctrine, scripture, and they'll tell you it's undeniable. Comes from Christianity. Christianity is the root of all ethics and morals. Without Christianity, what do we have? We have chaos. We have people out of control. We have people following their sinful nature. But Jesus came to the earth to show us different, how to act, how to behave towards one another. He set the standard, so to speak. So to be a Christian is to be a footstep follower of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. But I have a challenge, because a lot of even atheists that consider themselves cultural Christians, and I spoke to many, this week heading into this topic, and they'll say, no, cultural Christianity just refers to an identification with certain aspects of Christianity, like its cultural traditions, the holidays, maybe some moral values, but not necessarily holding personal beliefs in the core tenets of the faith. Essentially, it's a form of religious affiliation that mainly prioritizes cultural immersion over any sort of spiritual conviction, because that's irrational. We're just going to take the good parts, the parts we deem as good, and we're going to apply that, in our society, in our laws, and reflect it in our behavior towards one another. That's what it means to be a cultural Christian to them. Others will see it more than just a social or cultural marker, rather than a deeply personal religious commitment. They'll look at it like, by believing in Christ, that he actually was God or divine, died, rose from the dead, and he is the basis of salvation for sin. Those are the core tenets of Christianity. And they'll say that when you're an American, that's what it means to be a Christian. You can't just celebrate the holidays or take a name that's a Christian name. When you do that, you're just stealing, you're borrowing from our worldview. You're just stealing from our worldview. But in actuality, you wouldn't know what acting good towards your fellow man even means without Christianity as a foundation in this country. You wouldn't. That's what they'll tell you. But just from my own personal viewpoint, I have a few challenges, and we'll get into this. I'm going to let my people come on. Sophia, she's sick today. She won't be able to join me. I know she'd have a whole lot to say about this. I know she would, and she'll probably be commenting from the live chat. And anybody that's got questions or anything, feel free to put them in the live chat. Also, come on backstage, call in. Love to hear a different perspective. And again, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, so we can build a community and have these sort of conversations. But the challenges that I have is, first and foremost, the scriptures themselves. Like, there's a scripture that says, the alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt, and I am the Lord your God. So how would we apply that scripture when it comes to illegal immigration? What makes them illegal? What makes them non-legitimate? According to this scripture here, you're to welcome them as citizens among you. So I'm not saying that illegal immigration is right or wrong here. I'm just saying that if we're going to be consistent with your scriptures, and this is America, which is founded on Christian principles, then how do we resolve this problem when most evangelical Christians today are against illegal immigration, right? Because Jesus said in Matthew 25, verse 40, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of my brothers, you did it to me. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and you will love your neighbor as yourself. Luke 10:27. Do we see that in our culture today? With all of this division going on, I see a lot of division, especially on social media. I see a lot of white people hating on black people, vice versa. I see a lot of people hating on illegal immigrants. I see a lot of people hating on our president. I see people hating on our ex-President Biden. I see people hate, 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 hate for everything. We live in an outrage culture. Is this what Christianity is about? Is this that Christian, moral that America, is all about? Is this what they're talking about? I don't think people even think about it. And then in Acts 10:34 says, then Peter began to speak to them. I truly understand that God shows no partiality in every nation, anyone who fears God and does what is right and is acceptable to him is going to show no partiality to anyone. Do we really see this kind of behavior in our country? You know, um, Matthew 19:24. Again, I tell you, here's another scripture that kind of relates to our big consumerism nation that we live in. Jesus said at 19:24, again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. Matthew 5:48, you must therefore be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. What does perfection mean? Jesus tells us in Matthew 19:21, Jesus said to him, if you would be perfect, go sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me. Do you see many people on Wall Street giving away all their wealth? Do you see anybody out here giving away all of their wealth? Or do you see people endlessly competing to look better on social media as far as their material things? You know? And one of the things I had a discussion earlier this week in defense for cultural Christianity. They say, no, well, man is sinful. Man falls short. He's not going to meet the mark. Sin is a word that means sort of like missing the mark. It's based on people who shot arrows and missed the targets and stuff like that. And so people are going to miss that mark every time. So you can't really judge America because of it's not living up to the Christian values, but the values are still there and they're still the standard. So your point is moot, Scott. And he says, in fact, only Christianity has the highest virtue of all when Jesus said to love your enemies and pray for those who are persecuting you. That's one of the most enlightened, progressive, sort of extreme teachings of Jesus that no one else in the world ever came up with. No one ever came up with that but Jesus, right? Well, I've studied Buddhism, Hinduism, a little bit. I'm not a scholar or anything like that, but, Metta, the Buddhist teaching of Metta emphasized developing love, which is a universal and unconditional kind of love towards all beings, regardless of their actions or intentions against you. And so it's probably best to define what we mean by love. First of all, in Buddhism, to love someone is nothing more than to wish for them to be happy. That's it. It's not to be confused with any other type of love. And therefore, straight away, the task of loving your enemies becomes more realistic. And so this is explored in various sutras, including, the Anguttara Nikaya, the Dhammapada, which emphasizes that anger is resolved through love, not more anger. Now, keep in mind that Buddhism, Hinduism, these predated Judeo-Christianity. And so these sort of high-level moral, ethical views are nothing new. Christianity did not invent these things. These things were invented long ago. And many atheistic sort of cultures before that, in pagan cultures and things of that nature, respected the earth, respected each other. So these things are not new. So, we want to keep that in mind. We want to be realistic. So Again, this collection of verses just contains teachings like, happy indeed we live friendly and amid our haters. Among men who hate, we dwell free from their hate. And it also states that anger is never pacified by anger, but by love. These are ancient teachings predating Christianity. These are not unique to Christianity. And I think it's unique to just human beings. As we evolve over time and our cultures and our technology, we're able to express things a lot better. But what's unique is in America is, despite all of our technology, despite all of the advancements and progression that we supposedly have in this country, we still see a lot of hate out here. We still see a lot of outrage in our culture. It's like people have forgotten, these teachings of Jesus to love your enemies. Or did we even have them in the beginning ever? We talk about slavery. Why did it take Christians over 1,800 years to free transatlantic slaves? If it was so obvious, why didn't Jesus say, don't do slavery? Why didn't he say any of that? People will say, yeah, but the abolitionists themselves were Christians. But were slaves really freed because of the abolitionists, or were slaves freed for economic reasons that the North had interest in? These are good questions. It could be that wars are always said to have been fought over ideology, but any student in history knows that usually wars are fought over economic situations. Leaders, the powers, the elites want to maintain position and power. They want their countries to be the strongest in the world. And that's why the wars happen. And then they'll come later with a story saying, oh, it was to free the slaves. Oh, it was to do this or that. That's debatable. That's what I'll say. I'm not a historian, but it's debatable, And so I just want to say hey to everybody. Al Harding says, bring in the Trinitarians. That's always worth a funny. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of logical problems with the Trinity, isn't there? There's a lot of logical problems with religion and beliefs to begin with, and we can talk about that too today if you'd like. Any Christians want to call in and defend, the Christian view, how it's rational? Because all my beliefs, I believe that when you accept a teaching that is not true, or that doesn't make sense, or that gives you cognitive dissonance, you're just heaping on yourself some form of anxiety, stress, and suffering at the end of the day. You're not respecting yourself. You're not showing self-love when you just accept things blindly and without reason. And if somebody can show you reasons why your beliefs are untrue or unhelpful, that should be looked at as an act of love, I think, because you want to know truer things rather than false things, right? We all want to know what the truth is, or we hope so. I mean, maybe somebody could make the argument that, well, truth in that context, it may be unknowable, but we understand falsehoods pretty clearly. And one of the falsehoods I want to talk about is how Christianity is the designer of all values and morals and ethics. How do we know that? How do we know that these morals and ethics that we find in the Bible are not just a reflection of human beings, and that these morals and ethics sort of evolve over time rather than are anything objective, like an objective standard? Does anybody have any thoughts on these things? I'd love to hear it. We've got David in the back room, in the backstage. I'm gonna bring him on to see. David, are you with me, sir? He might have stepped away, but as soon as he gets back, I'll bring him on. Also have another Dave Pandias, who's going to come on. He wants to discuss things as well. So I think he's a Christian. And if you're a Christian, please come on through, man. Let's hear what you have to say. I'd like to hear more perspectives on this rather than just, um, just talk about my perspective. My perspective is that I'm just not convinced that Christianity is the foundation of all morality. That literally sounds like white supremacy. Exactly. Exactly. It sounds like one culture trying to impose itself on another. And we've got Caleb in the house. What's going on, brother?
Hey, not
One
much.
culture trying to impose
Um,
itself. Yeah.
I was I was wondering, like you brought up, many of us strive to believe as many true things as possible and reject as many false things as possible.
Yeah.
Um, would you say that there's ever a time that, because of its supposed benefits, face value, that it would be good to believe something that is false, but for whatever reason, it's good for society?
Yeah, that's a really good question because oftentimes um, truth is painful and truth is can literally cause one to to do himself harm. I mean, there you can imagine situations like that. And so, I have a friend. His name is Tom Jump, and his view is that no, it's more important to be happy than to be after truth, because number one, truth could be argued in many cases to be unobtainable because we don't really know what truth is. When we speak of truth, we're kind of engaging in sort of a duality of or a dichotomous thinking of it's either this or that. What's true? It can't be two things at the same time. That's a contradiction. And so, do we really have access to that? Is that really the way to think about truth? What do you think, David? I know you've done a lot of study on that.
I don't think Christianity has a monopoly on morality at all, and it's in fact an immoral system.
Hmm. What ways do you think Christianity is immoral?
Well, that it's based on emotional manipulation.
Mm, maybe like with the fear of hell and things of that nature.
Yeah, the fear mongering, the shame inducing rhetoric
Hmm.
that everyone's born terrible, and the only way you can not be terrible is through Jesus.
Yeah. Now, as a Buddhist yourself, how does Buddhism resolve that situation?
Well, I won't pretend to speak from the Buddhist perspective. Um, Mainly my own. I'm just inspired through Buddhism.
Gotcha.
Um, but it's just human nature. We we're all animalistic in a sense. So it's just learning how to mitigate our base behaviors. And
Yeah.
one way to do that is through self-awareness. You don't
Right.
need an
Right.
external source for that.
Kind of like the might makes right philosophy. It's not necessary, and it actually leads to a lot of evil, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Caleb, about that answer?
Yeah, no, I'd say it is very much, a human nature thing. Like, you know, when Christians criticize, you know, atheists for not having an alternative, it's like, well, it's like, first of all, atheism is just, a single proposition. It's like, do you believe that there's a God or not? And it's like, you're not going to get an entire worldview from that. It's like, all right, so there's no God. Now what? It's like, you have to explore, figure, you know, go on your own journey. And it's like, for me, it's like I found, a lot of fulfillment in humanism. It's like, trying to bring as much human flourishing to the world as possible without, creating an imbalance with the rest of, the ecosystem and everything else out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See that it's like I mentioned some of the texts from Buddhist sutras and things of that nature earlier. Yet, Buddhism is sort of atheistic. Yet they were talking about the same things that Christ was talking about with relation to praying for your enemies, showing love to those who persecute you. It seems that would be impossible on some of the beliefs of evangelical Christians or fundamentalist sort of Christian narrative, which I find very interesting. Like, why? What is the resistance to that based on? Like, why must people feel my particular religion is the source of all good things in the world, while yours cannot be? Why do you think that would even be the case? I don't even know if that's really promoted in scripture, to be honest with you. So I'm wondering, where do they get that idea from?
And can everyone hear me clearly now?
Yes.
I heard some people in the comments were having a hard time.
That's a them problem. No, I'm just kidding. But what do you think, Dave? Where do you think these people get this sort of tribal sort of issue from?
Well, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah, like,
The whole us and them rhetoric?
Yeah, because, a lot of evangelical Christians and fundy Christians will say, well, you can't really get morality unless it comes from the Christian God or from the Bible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they'll say that this is a Christian nation, that's why it's the best nation on earth. Yet we just read some of the sutras where the Buddha was all for it, like hundreds of years before Jesus. So where are they getting this from, I wonder?
Well, I would say it's rooted in the imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
It being spread by Rome, then England, and Spain, and now the United States. That's all it is. They're just attempting to monopolize on morality when they have no right to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. And even today, like we were discussing, like, I'm not taking a position on illegal immigration one way or the other here, but a lot of evangelical Christians are all for deporting illegal immigrants, while the scripture says you should accept and welcome the foreigner in your land as though they were those who live among you already. So that seems a bit inconsistent with their view,
Yeah. Like, when it comes to Trump specifically and evangelical Christians embracing him, it's like, as the someone outside looking in, it's like, I've read about, Christ, growing up as a Christian. It's like, and I can't find a single characteristic that Trump has that matches what Christ said or did. So it's just like, can a Christian name a single, Christ-like characteristic that Trump has? Like, is it even possible?
He's got a lot to say. That's one comparison.
Because to me, it seems like Trump is the antithesis of Christ.
Yes.
But,
he's more in line with Yahweh.
Old Testament. Gotcha.
Yeah, he's Old Testament, man. But even the Old Testament welcomed the foreigner in their land as though they lived among you. Now, that's not to say that later they didn't become slaves, because according to the same scriptures, you're able to take those people as slaves. And you can treat them harshly. Don't treat your fellow Israelites harshly. So there was a dichotomous situation there where they could point out the difference between, these are your brothers, the Israelites, but these folks over here, do with them as you will. There is a little bit of a difference.
And that's reflected still to this day.
Yeah.
We pay cheap labor to immigrants. We outsource cheap labor. Still persistent.
Yeah.
I feel like slavery is one of those things where it's just, it really puts a dent in the whole Western values are come from Christianity. It's like like you made a very good point earlier about like for the first 1800 years, like Christians seemed to be completely fine with slavery, and then all of a sudden they're against it, and it's like, what's the more likely explanation that Christianity somehow all along was anti-slavery, or that some outside influence came and had them change their minds, like like the Enlightenment era? And it's like, huh, I think the latter makes more sense.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
the
the argument goes on though that, well, slavery was normative back then. You know, it was just part of the cultures, and it wasn't just Jewish culture. It was, you know, all Arabic cultures, even, you know, Africans owned Africans, you know, Europeans owned Europeans, you know, it was just part of the culture from that era on up until relatively recently. And they'll say God really didn't do anything wrong here. But it's just kind of weird because the thing about it is God is supposed to be omniscient and all powerful and all of these things. If he knew that eventually slavery was going to be deemed wrong, then why didn't he just call it from the beginning and really prove that he was the true God by saying, I knew all along that this stuff was immoral? And you can tell that there's got to be some sort of tension there because he freed his people from Egypt, according to the story, right?
Yeah.
And that was wrong. And he even says in some of the regulations of slavery, you know, don't treat your brothers like you treat the slaves. You know, your fellow Israelites, while they're indentured, you know, don't treat them harshly like you do the slaves from among the nations that you've gathered, you know, and bought, that you will down and definitely, you know, will their children down over the ages. You know, that's obviously, I think that the same God knew it was wrong, but it's wrong when it happens to his people. I think that's the whole point.
Let's see. I would push back on the fact that it's like you say that morality is objective, that it comes from God, and it's like, so you it's either unchanging, which means slavery has always been wrong, or you turn yourself into this logic pretzel of trying to say that, oh no, but in this case, morality is relative. It depends on the time and place. It's like, well, wait a second. That goes against your core tenet of objective morality. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah. The other thing too is that they'll say that God's laws and morals are imprinted in our hearts and minds. And if that's the case, then why was slavery ever allowed in the first place? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a stickler, and you know it affected American culture from the beginning. You know, we had slaves. You know, and you know, being, you know, the freedom of slavery didn't happen in America first. You know, it was the British who, you know, liberated the first slave colonies there and fought. They've actually sacrificed blood and treasure for that endeavor. And then later on, you know, America followed suit, you know, for their own reasons. But it wasn't just an automatic knowing. You know, if the forefathers were Christians, as a lot of these evangelicals claim, then why did they own slaves? If it was so obvious in Christianity that slavery was wrong. You know, I think that, you know, people are just people. People do what people do, and it has nothing to do with the religion, except to maybe, you know, promote it, double down on it, maybe something like that, kind of like what the Old Testament did with slavery back then. Yeah, you own slaves. This is how I want you to do it. You know. It came from the people,
will.
came from the hierarchy. That's what it came from.
Yeah. God's will.
And I can hear you good, Dave. You're coming through
Okay.
good
All right. Good.
level. Yeah. Yeah. He showed us how it's done. He said you could beat your slave, as long as they didn't die after 3 days.
Yeah.
But if they died after 5 days, I wonder if that'd be okay.
Or perhaps that magic seventh day.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody's hearing everybody good. Yeah. Al Harding says he wants to come in and play the Christian role. So come on in, Al. I don't think Al is really a Christian. I know he studied with Mormons and stuff, and he talks a little bit about that at times, but I don't think he really identifies as a Mormon or a Christian. I'm just not too sure sometimes, but yeah, man, come on through. Let's hear what you got. And anybody else? I think Dave Pandias was going to come on. He's a Christian, and I think this is one of his things. But I think the folks like that, I think they call them open theists, or the liberal Christians. I call them weak-kneed, flag-waving, phony Christians. I think he's a flag waver. He's one of those Christians against slavery and against illegal immigration.
Flag bearers, basically.
Yeah. Just the phony flag waver. The real strong ones are the precepts. They're the ones that come in honest, and they at least they honestly tell you what they really think, which is stupid, but at least they're honest about it. The other ones are just trying to dance their way around the shit to make it seem, well, it's kind of rational if you think about it.
Work your way towards the gold in mental gymnastics.
Yeah. So if we have any weak-kneed phonies out there, come on through, man. I want to hear your perspective. We need some flag waivers too. We need some representation, man. They call them universalists. The universalist Christians, everybody's saved, even if you don't believe. Then what's the point?
If that were the case, then Christianity would be unnecessary.
Right. Exactly. It means that, if every religion is good, I mean, it's meaningless at that point, which I guess beliefs kind of are meaningless if you really think about it. If they're beliefs, then that means you really don't know what it is you're proposing or what it is you're suggesting or you're mentally committed to. And why would you want to do that? That's the psychological question. Like, why do people cling to their beliefs? Like, even if they know they're not true. I've heard Christians tell me that. Well, I don't really believe this shit, but I believe it. It's like, what? That doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Comes down to fear and insecurity, basically.
Yeah, or peer pressure, or
it's all interconnected here.
Yeah, it really is. Like,
if
imagine
you have enough people telling you you're going to burn. Well, maybe I'm going to burn.
Imagine you
emotional manipulation. So, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, imagine you went to seminary school, and you eventually, built up a church, and you run a church, and you make a really nice salary. Maybe you're like one of these Church of Christ, franchises. And let's say you're out there making tons of money, getting lots of donations, getting a lot of respect. And somewhere along the way, you lost your faith. You don't believe it anymore. But really, you don't really know what else you're going to do to make that kind of money, if any. Flip burgers at McDonald's. I mean, what are you going to do at that point? This proposes a big problem for a lot of people. So what they do least I've heard from talking to people similar to these situations, is they just fake it. They just continue to, fake the funk, so to speak, and they'll just keep on preaching that lie, because it's all they got. And then that's got to be a horrible way to live, living against your beliefs. I mean, that's got to be tough.
I know.
Until you make it.
I know. Was it the Dawkins Foundation? They try to help with that, like priests or clergy members who have lost their faith and they don't know what to do.
Darth Dawkins does that? No, I'm just kidding. The Darth Dawkins Foundation.
Speaking of him, I'm still waiting for him to get back to me.
Oh,
The rest of my life, though.
yeah.
So what's the situation with that?
I've listened to an open call out to Darth Dawkins to withstand the debunking of his nonsense. His Christian presuppositional argument. I've even challenged his disciples and other precepts to debate me on it. And I haven't gotten any feedback on it yet.
Yeah.
I know who would enjoy debating you. There's this guy called Catholic Traditionalist. He's a big precept. He just pops on shows and he just looks for shows like this, and he just pops in to debate. Like I was on this atheist podcast about a month or so ago, and shout out to them. That's Brooklyn Lou, his channel, Brooklyn Lou. And Catholic Traditionalists just popped in, and man, just started trying to steamroll Brooklyn Lou, like this common, stuff. Well, how do you what foundation do you use to say that this is wrong and this is right and this and that? And Brooklyn Lou was kind of not familiar with precept all that much. He's sort of an atheist, but he's not really that, he doesn't stay up with Christian apologetics and stuff. He doesn't really care about that kind of stuff. But I was telling him, yeah, you might, if you start doing a podcast openly, you might want to get familiar with some of this stuff so it doesn't take you by surprise, because he came on with these questions and he was like, like he didn't really have an answer. And Brooklyn Lou got mad and just dropped him, because he's like, you're just asking all these questions that, I could ask you the same question and this and that. And, and he just got frustrated. And the Catholic Traditionalist was very well versed in this precept argument. So he knew all the tricks to get him cornered. And finally, Brooklyn Lou just got tired of it and dropped him. And then he kind of felt weak about it. Like, should I have dropped him, Scott? That kind of was a weird look for me to do that. And I'm like, well, you just need to understand the argument a little better. You're falling into every one of his traps. Like, he's got a script, he's running a script, and you're just following the script because you're not familiar with it, because you don't care about that. I understand you don't really care about that kind of shit. But if you're going to do this and you want to engage Christians, you might want to get with it a little bit, because they will do this kind of shit.
Yeah. Because that's the exact intent behind it.
Yeah. He goes, yeah, but it just seems like he was just trying to make me look stupid. He wasn't really trying. I'm like, exactly. Probably to a lot of his Christian buddies, you did look stupid to them, know.
And I'm sure they were high-fiving each other in the background too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was just there like, damn, I wish I could be part of the debate to maybe help, because at least I'm a little more familiar with the argument, so I could work my way around it. But poor Lou, that was just ugly. But he knows better now. He's gotten a lot better.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's the problem with a lot of the atheists that have tried to take on precept. They just don't know how to work around the argument.
Yes, what I've noticed with a lot of the atheists out here, they're very primed up for the evidentialist apologetic. They like to deal with the William Lane Craig type people because they seem a little more easier to, debunk, I guess. And so they've kind of followed suit with say Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, what they call them, the Four Horsemen atheist people. A lot of people grew up with them and got influenced by that wave of atheism. And they were mainly addressing, the William Lane Craigs, the evidentialist sort of people. And that was always their tour. That was always what they spoke about, was the lack of evidence and stuff like that. And so the precepts came up with the whole, that's the worst argument you can put forward, evidence, because they're just putting themselves on the judgment seat of God. Let's turn it around on them, let's fuck evidence, let's talk about why you even want evidence. You wouldn't even know what evidence was without borrowing from the Christian worldview, so they just try to go deeper with the rhetoric. All right, so Al says, hold on a minute, man. The on my window will not show options. Come on, man. Are you an American or what? Americans are supposed to know how to use the technology.
I don't know, like a lot of the fellow atheists I've come across don't even seem a whole lot of that interested in philosophy to begin with. It's like they just want the scientific evidence. And, a part of me gets that, but it's like, I don't know, it's like there's a lot to learn though from philosophy. And I don't think it's all useless.
Oh yeah, it really is. And the thing about that is when you start saying things like philosophy is useless, you're kind of doing philosophy at that point. So
yeah,
you're not really getting out of it.
Yeah.
What's going on, Al? You with us now?
Yeah, everything's all good. Hey, give me a minute to catch up on the conversation. Where are we at?
All right, we're just kind of talking shop right now. We kind of put it on hold till you got in. We're just talking about the different apologetics that Christians put forth these days. So yeah, we're going to get back to the topic of cultural Christianity. America, we have a melting pot. We'd like to say we're a melting pot of different cultures, but a lot of our evangelical friends will tell you that's not really true. We're mainly a Christian culture. We're a one-sided country. We're Christian, and while we have a lot of different people among us, like Muslims, atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, people like that, they're very small number as compared to Christians that go to church, that live out the values. And in fact, our whole economy is based on Christian values. Our whole scientific progress is based on Christianity. It's not
Good
based
Lord.
on atheists.
Well, who lied to them?
I don't know. What do you think would? Because you obviously then know it doesn't come from the Bible, so you're right for that. But where do you think they get that idea from?
I'm just serving their own interests, basically. I mean, they're using the Bible out of context, and kind of like the people that go into court wearing a cross, and try to get a lighter sentence. Well, they're kind of using it in that way, and they shall burn in hell for that.
Yeah.
But no.
So what is your view? So you said you're going to come on as a Christian perspective. What is your point that you'd like to make on that context?
For the topic at hand, or what we're discussing now?
Yeah. Either way.
Oh, well, for the topic at hand, there's nothing wrong with the fair weather Christians. They're trying. They need a little more guidance.
Mm-hmm.
But
so
they don't want to commit yet, and that's fine. I mean, you can't beat somebody into doing the right thing, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. So like say here's a hot topic. So let's say with illegal immigration. The Bible's and Jesus himself was pretty clear in saying that you should welcome the foreigner as though he were a citizen that lives among you.
Yes.
How do they solve that problem when countries have laws, we're not really a country unless we have borders. There
Well,
has
in
to be a
Christian,
separation, there can't you just can't let people trickle into your country unfettered, that'll be
that's
the
right.
argument, but yet how do
If
they square that with what Jesus said?
if you want to use that Bible verse in the proper context, yes, you welcome them in as your guest. But if they are going to be an invader, well, you kill them. And that's that plain and simple. You do not invade a country. If you come in here as a guest, yes, you will be treated properly.
Right.
And that's where people are losing, they're getting diluted in their own values that they want to push. So, okay, Democrats want to replace a voting demographic, so bring them all in. And Republicans are like, no. And all the Bible says is, hey, if you guys come here legally, you're a guest. We're going to treat you fine. Come to like the people do in Florida.
Hmm.
Come on and stay. If you want to join us, be one of us, great. If not, well, get to packing.
Yeah. Here in Florida, and I know firsthand. I work with people here. I live here in Florida. Work with people, talk to people. Um, People here seem, and I was in California, so there's a big, huge difference. I noticed here in Florida, people are very protective. They have a lot of they have a big protectionist sort of view, and that's whether you speak to you know black people, white people, Mexican people. I know people from all walks of life here, and so there's a lack of trust, and everybody's got a gun, everybody's armed, everybody's waiting for something to pop off at any minute. If you go to a bar, people are sitting around, in the corners, like just waiting for some shit to happen. And then fights break out, and then people are pulling their guns out. And it's like the wild, wild west sometimes. That's why I don't really go out too much anymore. But there's a lot of that macho sort of feeling in the air here. That sort of stand your ground, you know, fuck around, find out type of attitude. California was mainly like very, oh, everyone, we love each other. It's all about, hippy dippy, sort of mentality. And people in Florida hate people in California. And when I used to tell people I was from Florida, they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. you know, so
Oh, yeah.
it's really different culture. And there's more Christians here in Florida, more evangelicals. Like there's a church on every corner. I swear to God. Like down south, it's like liquor stores and churches are on every corner down here. And
Don't forget the
California is,
CVS.
yeah, in a CVS.
Here in Georgia.
Yeah. So yeah, it's oh, I got Dave trying to come in. I'm gonna give him a StreamYard link. He's kind of
Well,
confused.
what's the difference? California and Florida. Not the Christianity part. What's the difference?
Well, yeah, I can talk about that because I live there. I'm not living in California for a reason.
Yeah. Well, the difference is Floridians. It's one of the newest states, and I mean, we still have that in our blood.
Yeah.
We built this place. We built this paradise, and all
Mhm.
these people are coming in. They're literally invaders. They're coming in, and they are paving paradise and putting up a parking lot.
Oh man, I hear
And
about that every day. Stop.
yes, well, why
That's
do you
all I
think I
hear about
left?
is them damn Yankees coming down here and
Yes.
turning our beaches into parking
Oh
lots.
my God, they don't have indoor voices. But
Yeah.
anyways, yes, but it's like, dude, it's like it's fine if you want to come in and assimilate. Great, Okay, but you're coming in, you're wrecking our lifestyles, you're wrecking the paradise that we built. And that's the thing, with like the immigration issue. If you want to take it all the way back to the Bible quote you mentioned,
Hmm.
you guys are coming in, and pardon my French, but you're fucking our shit up.
Yeah. Well, see, look, this is the thing, though, Al, is that I'm telling you, these same people are Christians that are talking like this when they're saying, don't, mess our beaches up, stop building parking lots all over our nature trails and everything, right? Um, at the same time, these people voted for Trump en masse. So, Trump is all about development. He's all about, building up infrastructure. The Republican tagline, we're trying to progress, we're trying to build industry, bring manufacturing back. We're not, screw these nature lovers and their tree huggers and all these kind of people. We want to build this economy up. And the way you do it is by building up industry, developing companies. I mean, that's really what you're talking about. Like most of the people that come here and build these resorts and stuff on the beach are Republicans. They're big business people. And yes, they hire illegal immigrants here to do the work because it's cheaper. And these are all Republicans. These are all Christians. These are all, that demographic. And it's just, for me, I'm not saying that it's bad or good right now. I'm just saying that it's just curious to me how people can live so contrary to their supposed beliefs, unless they don't believe them anyways, and they're just cultural Christians, whatever that means.
I'd have to go with your latest end on that. Fair weather Christians. This gets me out of jail.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dave?
Phony flag waivers. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, backing it up to people fucking it up. We could also consult the indigenous perspective on who's actually fucking things up. So I'm sure they have a very different take on all that.
Yeah, they would. Hey, got Dave Pandias in the house. How's it going, Dave?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you for letting me be here. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, man. I wanted to get your take on the conversation. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to much of it.
I haven't. I've been busy, and I was able to get the right URL and get to the right spot, and I'm in now. So I hope to stay, but I apologize. I haven't really been in the conversation, so I really don't know where you guys are yet.
Hey, any chances this Dave from last weekend?
He was from a few weeks ago. We had a debate on non-duality.
Yeah,
I recognize the voice. Cool guy.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, I want to know your guys' take on this question of cultural Christianity. Absolutely, I do have my own opinions, but I might be wrong.
Okay, well, we've pretty much just been talking about what cultural Christianity is, and it's kind of, for what a lot of people say, like atheists in particular will say, that cultural Christianity is really just referring to an identification with Christianity through its cultural traditions, some of its moral values, but not necessarily holding on to the core tenets of the faith. So essentially, it's like a form of religious affiliation that prioritizes cultural immersion over the spiritual conviction. Now, a lot of Christians, in particular, like fundamentalists or evangelical Christians, will say no, that actually all of our morals, all of our virtues, all of the good things that happened, like progress, technology, all of the good things, women rights, freedom from slavery, all of these things are on account of Christianity. And that the atheists and the unbelievers just don't want to admit it. They just want to think it's about the holidays and the Christian names and, some of the more superficial things, but it has no relevance to the moral or ethical grounding.
Would you call that the Easter egg Christians?
Yeah, those who love the holidays. I mean, they will not work on Christmas, right?
Right.
Okay. No, it was well.
I call them cafeteria Christians. They just pick what they want and leave the rest.
That'll work.
Yeah, a lot of people are that way. I've been trying to study and figure out how these things kind of work. And took this course from Dr. Sapolsky, and he points out that a lot of our behaviors track back to frustration or love. They track back to a couple of basic strategies, which are really important: camouflage or deception. And if you're obliged by Christianity to make everyone else a Christian, then wouldn't you get frustrated if they say no?
Yeah, it's a good question. What I think one of the key points to kind of look at is the identification part with the moral and ethical grounding. Why is it that atheists want to disassociate from Christian values and say that it's not from Christian values? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the history and just tracking the history over time. Say from the beginning, like for example, we were going on and talking about slavery, right?
Yes.
Now, most people, including most of your Christians in America, would say that slavery is wrong. Slavery is morally bad. They'll agree to that.
Yes.
Yet, and they'll say this is why Christians got rid of slavery, right? But they didn't get rid of slavery until what, the early 1900s or mid 1900s through the Civil War here in America.
If you mean the formal version, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So the question is, like, why did it take so long for Christians to actually do this? So an argument that could be made is that, well, this reflects the evolution of human beings over time, as we get more, economically strong, technologically strong. We don't need slavery so much. We're able to address it. We all knew it's wrong, but we don't speak on it as wrong. And that's the reason. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Papal Bill of 1455 specifies that it's okay to take slaves. And in fact, it may even be a Christian's obligation to do so because you can indoctrinate those people into the faith. That is an important point. Again, you get back to that love-hate relationship caused by the notion that you must get people into the faith. The Papal Bill of 1493 gives the right to take land. And we will say that it's wrong after we've taken it, but that's been true of at least 3 continents, maybe 4. Okay, so, I mean, come on. So it's plain. In terms of evolution, as a natural process of biology, doesn't that really take a really long time? Not hundreds of years, but thousands or tens of thousands of years?
Yeah, biologically correct. But we're talking about societal evolution.
But aren't
so
the
an argument.
But
Yeah,
aren't
so
the
like,
underlying drivers still? But aren't the underlying drivers still the animal that we are?
yes, and that's why in my opinion, the slavery is still there. Is because I think like what it's Louis C.K. said, like the third thing we did when we're on Earth is make other people do it. It's like our animal instinct is to just conquer and control people and get them to do our stuff for us, right? That's the animal side of us. Whereas,
Absolutely.
we transcend societally. We have this ability to transcend though our biology. So like, whereas like most males are programmed to go out and just, procreate with as many women as you possibly can. That's the driver. Yet a lot of people don't do that because of transcending that biological imperative. Like a lot of Christians will say, well, being unfaithful to your spouse is a sin, and so I won't do it. And many people are successful in that. And so they transcend their biology,
Well,
Absolutely
you're
true.
correct in that.
Yes, I've been married
correct in that
37 years.
statement. I mean, this is not only Christianity, that's pretty much all religions. And if you want to get at the root of philosophy, that's the root of that too. We are capable of doing this. And there are these different methods, religion, proper philosophy, and all that. And yes, it will help you get to those, better states. It's a long-term thing and long-term gain, basically. There's where a lot of atheists fail. They just want a short-term gain. And no, it takes a little work. But what was it Dave the deist
Yes.
was saying? Yeah, there's been some really strange breakups from the good book. The Protestants are a great example, and Catholicism's the other end of that spectrum. Do they support slavery? It's like, well, yeah, actually they do. Then the Protestants cry about it because that's all the Protestants do.
The reformers.
Reformers, no, they just whine about everything.
They just whine about it. They're the whiner class.
Yeah, the whammeraners.
Isn't the Bible confusing? Aren't there a lot of contradictory lines in it?
No.
When I first built my philosophy, I started my philosophy back in the 70s, I read Thomas Paine's Age of Reason, and he compared the various Gospels and showed some of the discrepancies from one to the other. So isn't the good book a little confusing to people? Atheists like a known truth, a absolute truth perhaps, or as a foundational truth. And that means to them, how do you prove the good book?
Well, deist Dave, the Paine reads everything in a literal fashion. If you read the Bible literally, you're going to say this is a bunch of BS because nobody gets swallowed by a whale and then spit out alive. And no, it's not the point. It's you have to read the Bible metaphorically and understand the meaning behind it. What is that story telling you? It's like Spider-Man. Nobody believes some little nerd is going to shoot spider webs out of his hand and stop a train to save everybody. It's the good guy message, basically.
I mean, I'd say though that it depends though, because I mean the Bible is a collection of books, and so it's like there's a lot of genres in there. It's like you can't really apply that metaphorical lens to Leviticus and Deuteronomy. It's like those are just law books. It's like stating what you should or shouldn't do.
Honor
And there's
your
been
mother and your
several
father.
canonizations as well.
There you go. Honor your mother and your father. Why? They could be, horrible people. So why honor them?
Actually, the problem is in the Ten Commandments is not the 3rd through the 10th. The problem in the Ten Commandments is the 1st and 2nd commandments. The reason why you should honor your parents can be tracked back to biological imperatives. That's simple enough. But the first 2 commandments are where the division comes that atheists can see. Yeah, the first 2 commandments says, I am the God, there's no other gods other than me, don't worship. And the second one has something to do with idols. Isn't that true?
Part of it, but...
Yeah, but isn't that divisive and isolationist?
No.
Doesn't that make a boundary around a certain set of people instead of accepting everyone for who they are?
Are you saying boundaries should not exist?
I'm saying that the boundary that was formed in the Middle East 4,000 years ago has been weaponized, and it has used to control the society in the Roman fashion. Sort of like bread and circuses kind of thing. I mean, you don't have to have slaves to control the people, do you? I mean, Fox News does a good job.
Hey, Jesus, before Christianity got along with the Romans. There's a particular group that had him put on the cross. But he said, get along with your neighbors as well.
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem with Jesus. I have a problem with churchianity. There's a big difference. Okay, Jesus is a good man. He's a teacher. He's a philosopher. He's a prophet. But churchianity is this, you must agree to my rules or I won't accept you. And if you don't agree, I get to be frustrated.
Those are little
I
children
would,
trying to walk in his footsteps, not walking alongside of him.
Yeah, that's the
I would,
intent you see, but other people see the other intent. They're both valid.
I would say that the tribalism was prevalent before Rome's involvement.
As
Yes.
it should be. Do you want a bunch of savage Muslims living in your city? No.
I mean, prior to Muslims.
The Jews take it all the way back to the formation of Abraham. I mean, back to Abraham. They certainly take that back to that point. The whole idea of the bris from that point was to make the Jews a separate group.
And
But
the rest of
the
us are Goyim.
tribalism goes all the way back.
Goyim. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Christianity is welcoming, whereas Judaism, well, that's very, very clannish, if you will.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, I don't even want to talk about the Jews today. I got a hangover and I'll get really mean. But no, the Christians.
Let me point. Can I point out some of the organic things that I've figured out recently? I mean, I do not mean that these are the all end. They are not the total, but they definitely contribute. And that is that if you take a look at the philosophies from the Far East, they were developed during temperate climates. In other words, they needed organization. They needed the ability to save food, to get through the winter. So they built large organizations. But those organizations were always accepting because there was enough resources and water to get through. The Middle East is more about protecting your well. There's a limitation of resources. So the evolution of philosophies in the Middle East reflects that you have to protect your group or you have to maintain your group. Now, in ancient times, two people from trying to go to the same well, instead of having a war, they send one guy from either well and they would start comparing genealogies. And if they could find a relative in common, which they always did,
Yeah.
it allowed them to both use the well at the same time. But water is a commodity in the Middle East, which has to be understood that it does, in fact, force conflict simply because of that. If you take a look at Africa and the philosophy of Pendu Paleo, then you see another philosophy in which you see camouflage and you see the need to adhere to whatever anyone says in order to get what they're willing to give you. So the truth of the matter is that all of these philosophies are from natural sources. Is that reasonable?
Yes, that's very reasonable.
Yes.
I looked into that around 20 years ago and already forgot what it's called, but it has an effect on your epigenetics and everything. And that's kind of why we're different. But
Yeah.
But you're right, it does. It absolutely does. Look at Europe. They're all supposed to be white people and blah, blah, blah. And they're very different people, even in the same countries. Land does affect who you are and your philosophies on everything. But in regards to the Bible, how did that welcoming, just spur out of the middle of the hellhole desert?
Well, you do have the Jews in their thing, right? And that made the basic 10 Commandments to work with. And it made the first two, which put a border around the group. Now you had Rome coming in there with that situation in place. Is that reasonable?
I'm with you.
So if that is the situation that is in place, and Rome wants to maintain a very wealthy elite class and a very poor population, they want to find some way to control them. If you take a look at Greek philosophy from Aristotle on, you can see that, or actually from Plato on, you can see that there is a general drive in the rational philosophy of Greek philosophy to gain and maintain an empire. In fact, Plato's student was Aristotle. Aristotle's student was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great had a great empire, and he lost it and the Greeks lost it the day he died. So the question becomes, is how do you keep it? Okay? And
Right.
you can see the evolution of Stoicism. You can see the evolution of this idea of this is what we have to do to get it to happen. Meanwhile, Rome took the entire Mediterranean, which was incredible. Now they had a problem. They had to figure out how to maintain and run a state of that size and not have to tell people what to do. So you see Paul and Peter as great salesmen selling something that may or may not have been real.
Well,
And then you see Theodosius with heresy. And you have the seesaw. You have a seesaw of emotional actions simply because of the need to help other people become Christian.
yes, and here you go. You mentioned the Greek philosophers. Aristotle came out well before the Bible, okay? And you want to have a perfect society, promote virtue. And that's why Aquinas took a lot of Aristotle's stuff and pumped it into the Bible itself. But the Bible in its heart, the people that espoused what Jesus's principles and teachings were, and all was virtue. And that's rolls back into the topic of the show right there. That are these fair weather Christians? Are they doing enough? Do you want to maintain society? Do you put up borders? Do you actually scratch the border thing? That sounds scary. Do you want to maintain standards?
Well, you're discussing Jesus and you're not talking about Peter and Paul. Peter and Paul's message is you have to believe in Jesus. Jesus's message, a very good message, a virtuous message, can be changed at the Creed of Nicaea, obviously, because that's the fulcrum.
Yeah.
That's where you say it even starts with words like "I believe."
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed, like just studying a lot of this stuff over the years, is that it seems like Christ, the teachings of Jesus was more idealistic. So he was more putting forth an ideal rather than any practical way of putting it, more of a Gnostic sort of view, where his kingdom was not of this world. This world is not the focus. Store your treasures in heaven, not on the earth. So it had a more Gnostic sort of view. And
right now doing a show.
oh, hey, my sister Shelly is in. Hey, Shelly.
And your nephew Tristan.
Oh, and Tristan. Hey, my nephew Tristan and Shelly, my family. They're over in Germany right now, so they're calling from Germany. How you guys doing?
We're
This
good.
is Guten Tag this time of day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nighttime here. It's 8:30.
Yep. How are y'all doing over there right now?
We're good. We're good.
Cool.
How are y'all doing?
We're doing good. We're just talking about cultural Christianity, and how Christianity has affected America, or if it really had at all, or whether it's just a product of human evolution societally, or whether religion really had anything to do with it. So we're talking about religion pretty much, Shelley.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah. So you said Tristan's on the line? Can he talk?
Yeah, he can talk.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me turn the camera back on. Hold on, just a sec. Oh,
Okay.
hi guys.
Hey, Shelly.
Yeah, we're just hanging out. But yeah, he'll be here in just a second.
My sister, she's a performer, so she's on tour in Europe. Hey,
Hi.
Tristan, how's it going, man?
Great. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Doing great, man. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in years, nephew.
I know. It's been a long time. I think open light would be great.
So let me ask you something, Tristan, off the cuff, because we're talking about Christianity in America.
Yeah.
What is Christianity like in Germany? Is that a big deal in Germany?
No.
Right now, no, it's not.
Not at all.
No, religion is, well, not the Christianity side. That's not a big problem here. We have other problems. with other beliefs and religions here in Germany right now.
Mm. So
Yeah, that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
Man, when I lived in Germany years and years ago, Tristan was just a baby, but back then, man, Christianity wasn't even a cultural thing. Like
It's
I
not.
know that, yeah, like Christmas, you very few holidays were Christian
We
that I
do have
remember.
that. Yeah, we do have that still,
Yeah.
but it's still not a big deal. The churches are empty, basically. No one's really going to church anymore Sundays, so it's only the
Mm,
holidays.
Right.
gotcha.
Yeah.
No, they're
And
turning
yet,
them all into
you know,
mosques. You can say it.
a lot of people feel like in America that our moral fortitude and values and virtue is because the church is so influential and religion is such a big deal, which if that was true, that'd be kind of scary because we were just going over, like, even in Christianity, a lot of the some of the virtues, which were like welcome the foreigner in your land, um, love all people, love your neighbor as yourself. That's kind of like opposite of what we see, at least on social media and the news here. All we hear about is hate, 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 and outrage. Yet, if this is a Christian country, why does that stuff exist? And a lot of people will say, well, it's just because we've lost our way, or it's because we're imperfect humans or whatever. But it seems like in Germany, you guys are, I don't know what the political climate is there, but it seems to be much less outrageous than in America. And yet you guys aren't influenced by the church. You don't have such a cultural
No,
proclivity
we
to
don't do that.
religion,
No. Everyone is free to go. Everyone has his own way of religion or thoughts or beliefs, and we all accept that. And basically, we do that, but a bunch of people do not, and then it starts getting worse here with stuff like that with religion.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
it's a crime to be a Christian in Europe at this point.
At this point, yes.
And if you are not a state worshiper, God help you. If you do
Yeah,
not support Islam, God help you. You will disappear.
definitely at some point.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I heard about somebody was I don't know if it was Germany or if it was Norway or somewhere. Somebody was praying outside of an abortion clinic, outside of the zone, I think the prayer zone or whatever.
Yeah, something like that, and got killed, right?
Yeah,
So
he got arrested, and I think he finally got killed or something. It was pretty bad, like just for praying. And then I heard, now I don't know if this is true, but in Germany they say if praying is outlawed in public, and if you even pray in your house and you're told on, somebody can tell on you and you can be fined or something like
That's
that.
not
I don't know.
true. That's not true. That's not true. You are allowed to live your religion in any way you want to do it in Germany, as long as it's not extreme.
behind closed doors, if you're certain religions.
It's certain religion. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, religion is so divisive, and especially with certain religions. I hate to like call out certain religions and try to be special pleading or something, but I even had I'll put it to you this way. I had a discussion with a Muslim kid in my neighborhood when I was living in California, and he was just a young guy, maybe early 20s, and we were just talking about religion in general. And I was just telling him, my religious background and why I'm no longer part of religion and things of that nature. And then I think his older uncle came out and overheard the conversation, and he jumped in and he was like, "Look," he goes, "he's going to be a Muslim. We are Muslims. And the thing about that is that Americans, you guys are very weak. Europeans and Americans and white people, you're very weak because in Islam, you would have your head cut off. We would kill you for talking some of the things you talk about.
I know.
And eventually in our country, you know, we're going to spread around the world and we're going to take over and we'll bring over, you know, a better, you know, world based on the strength of Allah. And whereas Christians and atheists, you guys are scared, you're pacifists, you can't fight, you don't want to fight for your, you have no stands on your own, and we will defend Islam to the death. You know, and he just went on to make the point that Americans and Europeans were very weak and were very scared type of people. And that sort of worried me because I'm like, well, if that's really the way they think, then is that really something we should welcome? So,
I mean,
Yeah,
we're
I don't know.
that's like
people
the
are trying
ultimate
to-
snowflake reactionary
No.
take on it.
Say that
We
again.
don't like it, so we're gonna. I would just say that's just like the ultimate snowflake reactionary take on it. We don't like it, so we're gonna kill you. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, welcome to Islam. I'll tell you what, I haven't been to Europe in 20 years now. And the last time I was there was when I was leaving the sandbox and went into Germany and rented a car and drove down into Italy and came back, then went home. But I actually cried on the way home because I knew I'd never go back to Europe again. It was not Europe anymore. And it's just,
I mean, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. No.
it's,
We are still kind of superior. but
yeah, you never would have thought there'd be no-go zones in Europe. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, and it's just became to a point where it's not. So I can understand the Muslims, you know. The Christians held the gates of Fortress Europe for 700 years. Then they flung it open.
Political religion more political than ever today.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
Nothing but
no matter if
politics.
it's Muslim, Catholic, I don't know. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of religion you have. It's all political.
Yep. And it's absolutely scary. They lost their essence. Everything that made all the goodness is gone.
And they use religion as a weapon. Like the Muslims. That's what they do right now in Germany.
Yeah, yeah. We were just looking at the top of the show how, you know, the Catholic Church, you know, endured over the Roman Empire. You know, the Roman Empire, you know, of course, collapsed and Rome kept in power. But part of how they did it was through the Crusades and through some of the aligning themselves with the powers at hand and doing what they had to do to stay in with the political powers. And they've always done that. And then the Protestants came along and they sort of aligned themselves in different ways. And it's just always been like that. And I think religion is just used as sort of an ideological motive for the people to rally behind the powers that be, you know, whatever their kings are, whoever their presidents are. They're going to rally behind them in the name of religion, whatever religion that is, you know.
Instead of virtue, they use religion as a bludgeoning tool.
Exactly. And you can see that they do that. You can look at, you know, even the hypocrisy, you know, even the most, you know, strongest Christians here ignore certain biblical texts and will try to cherry pick what they want. The cafeteria Christians, as David calls them, they're so willing to do away with, you know, inconvenient teachings, you know, and things like that, like welcome the immigrant into your country as if he was your own brother, you know, and things like that. Like, this is far removed from the Christian thinking that I've encountered in this country. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not trying to make any sort of judgment about it. I just see the hypocrisy in it, you know, and it's really interesting how that plays out. Now, one thing that I think Dave Pandias was talking about was some of the other cultures and philosophies that talk about, you know, some of the same values or other good values. And the thing that I find interesting is that, and this kind of goes to the cultural narrative we're talking about, is that in academia, only, European philosophy, let's talk about philosophy, only European philosophers are really counted as legitimate philosophers. In other words, they don't talk about African philosophy. They don't really have classes on Far Eastern philosophies. It's mainly centered around European um, philosophical views, which a lot of these traditionally have been Christian philosophers or people that spun out of Christianity. And I think it's very kind of stupid to do that, because you're missing, like Dave was saying, you're missing so much richness of what other cultures have to offer. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to join this book club, but I'm only going to read the books that come out on Thursday. Forget the good ones that come out Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm only going to consider the books that are released on Thursday because they're so good. Like, why would you limit yourself to that perspective when there's so much out here? Like, there's so much Far Eastern wisdom traditions and teachings that are valuable and that offer a different perspective. Why is it only just the European, literature that's allowed in these now? And I understand we live in a culture where being politically correct is important. They'll tell you right offhand that, look, we're inclusive, inclusivity, equality, all of this stuff is very important. We want to have all views considered. But I was watching an interview from a Buddhist philosopher who teaches philosophy in academia, and he says that his school prohibits him from teaching um, Far Eastern philosophies or African or Native American philosophy, because it's not part of the curriculum. You've got to stay with the curriculum, which is going to be your European writers and people like that. So I just wonder, is that part of the cultural Christianity we're talking about? Is that how it trickles down?
Absolutely. It is part of it. Remember that Christianity comes from a position of a monism. And as a monism, it is steerable. Okay, the Mandela effect can be used to teach people what they ought to think and believe. If you take a look at how people jump for hope as their money is siphoned off of them because of the lower wages and siphoned to the extremes, you find that people are willing to grasp at any straw. The Reformation doctrine of faith, of justification of faith, specifically takes Christianity away, or churchianity away, from the notion of what is here. Okay, you work for things after you die. That monism has no structure for real. It's all in your head. And that's out of Plato. And that was one of the basic ideas. So you have to have a dualism where something is outside of you before you can stabilize what you believe and think. And that's what a lot of atheists do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very dualistic in their thinking, and that's the thing about the Eastern traditions are more. They're not as dualistic at all. In fact, they're mainly non-dual sort of philosophies are very prevalent there. A lot of they don't really embrace a lot of these same dichotomies that we talk about, and it kind of gets very deep and philosophical. And as you know, Dave, we had a whole debate on this whole thing. So, how I kind of feel about it. Like, all of our meaning and values do come from a sort of dualistic sort of experience, obviously. And a lot of atheists I know would tell me that, well, that's where you fail, because that's the contradiction that you face. Because on one hand, your entire meaning and even reasons for saying some of the things you're saying is because of duality in your experience and everybody's experience, yet you're talking about non-duality at a very fundamental level. So how does that even work? That's a paradox of, but the thing is, I embrace paradox. I see them as letting us in on a greater reality, understanding that through our limited mind, through our limitation, we see paradox because we're so embedded and connected to this dualistic way of experiencing the world. But actually, as we dig deeper, not just scientifically, but philosophically, we can see that it's actually a very non-dual reality that we live in. And it's part of the beauty of it all. And so I just embrace the paradox. Why not? What do you think, Dave?
Well, we have to have both. I do see the monism and the dualism. But the point is that in churchianity, in lectures, in sermons across this country, people can be steered in a particular direction. Their beliefs can be changed for the purposes of whoever is writing the sermon. Okay?
Mm.
The point is that when you take a look at Christianity, if you separate it into churchianity and Jesus, how do you know where the separations really are? Jesus is a good man. His Beatitudes are wonderful. But if you take churchianity, then you can see that it is steerable. It is drivable. It's a tool from Rome, from ancient Rome. And right now, in the United States, you see the result. Fascism is a natural result of Rome. And that's what Rome was. I mean, that's it. That's it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, David?
I agree.
Yeah.
And there's not much more to say to it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then again, there's certain things about Christianity that sort of I will admit it kind of transcended like Roman culture, Greek Roman culture. Like, for example, like say the crucifixion comes to mind. Like, in Judaism, if you were nailed to a cross or you were put to death, or that was seen as a shameful thing to you. That was almost like an indictment on your being a prophet or being someone of God, was the fact that you were put to death. In Rome, they'd crucify you in the open, just to, and this sort of stuff only pertained to the lower classes of people in society. That more wealthy, hierarchical people in the hierarchy, in the upper hierarchy, didn't have to suffer the humiliation of a crucifixion. Only the small time people did. People like Jesus, street people, poor Jews, people who spoke against the Roman powers that were, of lower class or whatever. They were crucified. So it was a shame. Yeah, it was like a shameful thing. Now, Christianity came along to actually look at the cross as something empowering. They looked at it as, carry your cross daily. You're going to carry your cross the way I did, following the footsteps of Jesus, who was killed as a martyr, and then this whole martyrdom business. And so a lot of these things were turned on their heads, socially. And so Christianity come to look at suffering as kind of a good thing, a virtuous thing. This world is rags. It's the other world that matters, So if you're poor here in America, in this world, good, that's great. In fact, if you want to be perfect, give up all your belongings and give them away, so that you can be perfect like your Father in heaven. So
isn't Buddhism the exact opposite? Isn't Buddhism the exact opposite, to minimize suffering?
Yeah, Buddhism is minimize suffering by embracing reality, pretty much.
Yeah.
And not being attached to it, like attached to outcomes and beliefs and things like that.
So
on excess.
Can I add something?
Where does legalism fall in comparison to compassion and truth in both societies, in Eastern and Western societies?
That would depend on who you ask, but you want to give, you want to talk about that, David? I'll give you a chance to talk.
Okay, well, what I see is that you must know that I'm for the Eastern philosophies. I'm definitely slanted that way, and I'm prejudiced, and I'm sorry for that. But they seem to figure out with oracle bones basic statistical analysis. They figured out that they can't control the weather with that, and because of that, they figured out some basic truths first. And when Confucius came along, he said morality comes out of the family and you should apply it to the entire society, which is the same thing that Jesus wants. It's a beautiful point. And then legalism came along in order to organize the society to make it work. And there were wars and there were battles and things like that. But there's always people who want to do that kind of thing. In the United States, currently, I see legalism ruling over compassion and truth. And so these two systems are backwards. The Eastern are truth, compassion, and legalism, while we're legalism, compassion, and truth. We minimize truth in order to maintain our compassionate structure and in order to maintain the legalism. The question is, what is belief versus behavior? In West, you believe rather than behave. In the East, you behave and your beliefs will follow. Those are different philosophies. They're upside down of one another. And that seems to be part of the root.
I agree, man.
Yeah.
I've noticed most deists do love Eastern philosophy. But, yeah.
Pantheism is kind of like an offshoot of some Hindu, maybe even Buddhist sort of influence.
I got it out of Spinoza.
Yeah, Spinoza's their Bible too. But yeah.
Yeah, I originally got out of Spinoza, but Jainism and Vedism, Buddhism, the Confucian ideas, the Tao, they all go back to that natural position. Okay, that is fundamentally important to the whole thing. So I definitely agree with that idea. I see the behavior of the people around here, ways of implementing our natural drives of tournament versus compassion or cooperation. Also,
well, Dave, let me cut you off real quick. Let me throw a question at you because I get this a lot from fellow agnostics or atheists. They'll say, well, why would you take that route when you can just say nature is just nature or the universe is just the universe? Why start bringing a lot of these attributes into it? How would you answer something like that?
well, if you take a look at the way we've evolved, you can see that the tournament species, or the drive for self, the drive to get things for yourself, is very important. 95% of species are, in fact, tournament driven. Only about 5% are peer bounded or pair bonded and build cooperative structures that are fairly large. Now, if you think about it, how do you feel when you get hungry? If you take a look at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, or Erickson, or you take a look at Kohlberg's stages of moral development, as you need more, as you go lower in Maslow's hierarchy, you must want for yourself. And you get adrenaline, you get strength, you get power trying to control things. If you get to the top of Maslow's hierarchy, you don't want to control it. You want to watch it. Okay, you don't say anything. You're quiet. You're pacifist. You're that cooperative position that a lot of atheists take. It is not, but both positions have to exist along with camouflage. So they have to be there. The question is, which one do you hold to be true? Which one's most important to you? Where are you in these scales? Okay, where is everyone in these scales?
Like self-actualization, wouldn't that be like the top of the hierarchy?
Yeah, it is. It certainly is.
Like at the bottom would be like your physiological needs, like your food, your well-being, stuff like that.
Exactly. And the layer above that is family, or security and family are the next two layers. Okay, so which are very important. So it's very important to understand that all of these things, that the need to take outweighs the need to give. It is, remember, compassion is a new thing on the block. Okay? Our ability to be worried about somebody across the planet does not exist in any other species. That's beautiful. We have this beautiful, wonderful capability God has given us to understand things that are abstract. But we still have that need. We still have those wants. We still have that adrenaline. Also, another important point is if you start off hungry and you stay hungry for a while, you'll always be hungry. Okay, the human mind freezes in position. Okay, to a great extent by the age of 25. That's the end of myelination in the frontal cortex. Now, you can change it a little bit. There's no doubt you can change it a little bit. But if you started out being a greedy person, if you started as a person who has to deceive people in order to get what you want, you'll stay that way for the rest of your life. You can't change after the age of 30 or 40 or whatever.
Oh yeah, it gets entrenched. Hey, Caleb, are you still with us, man?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I haven't heard much from you. So I think you
Sound
do you
off like you
identify
got
more as
hurt.
an agnostic, right? Like I was going to ask you, how would you respond to what Dave said about justifying like this pantheism through this hierarchy, this Maslow's hierarchy, for example?
I don't know. Like I don't feel too strongly about it because it's like I also like believe in Maslow's hierarchy, but it's like I'm not. It's like I've never really felt the need to like
To put a god on everyone.
attach the God label to that. It's like
Right.
to me, it's like if that helps you better navigate the world, then more power to you. Like, you know.
Yeah, see, Dave, that's what I was telling you is that like that's probably the normal response I would get from, say, an atheist or an agnostic on that. So can you help tie in how pantheism maybe relates more strongly to that?
Well, from a pantheistic point of view, now remember, I'm a pandeist, not a pantheist. But
Right.
but from a pantheistic point of view, the laws of nature have to be always accounted for. You can't plan your life for after you die. We don't know what really happens after you die. Okay,
Oh, I
that's a very important thing for atheists. Okay, you have to account for the second law of thermodynamics. Everyone must eat. You have to account for system stability, the strength of your borders. You have to account for chaos. How much will actually change simply because of random chance and the butterfly effect? These things are real, and we have to acknowledge them and incorporate them into our moral structure. Is basically how an atheist might look at these things. Now, a pantheist who's saying God is nature, the label is either necessary or unnecessary. But the simple mathematics that one can apply to the dualism allows for something different than nature or self. So you can build a God simply out of that. Now, God's a tautology. In my opinion, God is a tautology. It is first that incredible feeling, that spirituality everybody has, and that has nothing to do with your religion yet. You have a purpose for it. And if you want to call that God, great. If you don't want to, great. It doesn't really matter. And after that, you can attach another definition to it. And that another definition can range from a deep respect for nature, or a deep respect for the Bible, or a deep respect for your company. Okay? And remember, companies are always for the self, and government is supposed to be for the society.
Okay, so that's interesting. Another thing, though, just before we go on, because you mentioned this, there's a difference between deism and theism. So being a pantheist is different from being a pandeist. How? Explain that to the audience.
Okay, a pantheist is a person who says that nature itself is, and the interactions of nature itself, its miracles, its context from one end to the other is in fact God, and God is an emergent property of nature. We don't know about, an atheist would say, and pantheist would say, we don't know about what happened before the Big Bang, but the Big Bang obviously happened, and we are obviously here, and these are the rules, and I think they're marvelous, and I love to stare at a beautiful tree because it's beautiful, or the clouds. That's the pantheistic point of view. The deistic point of view is a product of mind. It's a product of what we believe from our histories, or from our stories, or from our things. And the pandeist idea is to add the two together.
So pantheists, You look at a greater mind out there, namely that of God, right?
No,
Embedded in nature.
no. God is an emergent property of nature. Okay, God
I
is the
see. I
ultimate
see.
witness.
Right.
God is
Mhm.
the ultimate witness.
But as what though? What is the property though?
It is the witnessing of existence. It is the beauty of the interactions. It is the beauty of the monisms as well. It is, but God does not have a unique consciousness like we do. But we do know it's going to follow these rules. Okay? We do know that the stars are going to go dark in 100,000 billion years. We do know that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. God is not a force that produces a human-like thought in
Right.
pantheism.
Very similar to idealism in a way.
Well, I'm an idealist. Everybody.
Yeah, we epistemically. I always like to point that out that most people are epistemically either idealist or even solipsist in many cases.
Now, solipsist is monism, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that means everything's in their head, and that means everything's like a cue ball on a pool table, and you can spin it as easily as you can spin a cue ball on a pool table, because it's all in one big dot. If you talk in terms of reality, you're talking one thing. You can't talk about one thing and its diversity because there's nothing else to compare it to. You have to, yeah.
But the problem is that there's a big attachment to, say, your kids, your parents, your loved ones. You say, well, these people can't just be a figment of my imagination. Otherwise, there'd be no moral accountability for how I treat these people. And I have a true connection, a true emotional commitment to these loved ones, right?
Absolutely.
So,
David
they'll
Hughes
say,
points this
well,
out.
then solipsism doesn't work for me, because if I go on Facebook, I'm just arguing with myself, or I'm talking to myself, or if I'm dealing with my loved ones, I'm just dealing with myself. So it takes the meaning out of life. Whereas if you have this true dualistic sort of relation, like at least like idealism, they would say, gives you that a little dualism there, where the minds are disassociated. So they truly exist in the external objective world. We're all just part of that greater mind. So the meaning is still there. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Yeah, but if perfection is defined inside your head because of what Plato said, then it's still all in your head. And if it's from a book or a man-made item, then it still came out of somebody's head.
Right.
You don't see it coming out of nature. You don't see it coming out of the universe.
Plato's a woo-woo artist, so you could dismiss anything he says.
The cave analogy was pretty cool, though.
Yes, it was a brilliant
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. He should have taken people out of the cave and said, look, this is what I mean by a tree. That's a tree. I mean,
There's
perfection, if you define, hey, sweetheart, if you define perfection inside your head, then you can make it anything you want it to be, including a dualism that actually touches the real world. If you define perfection with something outside of yourself, then you can be stable with regard to that, perfect thing or datum.
Yes. You do have a
And
stable
that datum
block
can be a
there.
book, but if it's a book, it's still a man-made thing and came out of somebody's head.
But the Christian precept will tell you that the book is a reflection of the mind of God. And so you're stable, but you're stable within the mind of God. And so you have a more perfect union with your beliefs. Whereas if you just originated them from your imagination, you'd have no foundation or proper grounding for your beliefs, because it'd all be subjective and subject to opinion, like you just said. But they'll say, well, God's opinion is more objective.
So the atheist says, how do you know there's God?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And Spinoza comes along and says, everything's God, but it's not a human-like mentality.
Right.
And not only is it, how do you know if there's a God, but how do you know if it's a good God? This God could be deceiving you.
Yeah, it's not applicable to us.
The thing is also is like, how do you know just that? in itself.
Yeah.
Even that comes out of the mind.
What comes out of the mind again? Say again.
Am I breaking up? I did step outside.
You sound
you're
The
good.
perception of a god. The
Yeah, the concept of God, all these concepts we're putting together are still from our mind.
yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to get at here.
It's
Yeah,
the
they are.
essence.
Step outside.
What
They
no,
are.
it's the essence. What is the essence of a god is the question that we're trying to answer.
And the absence of a God is the reality we have. And hopefully you have a great degree of reverence for what you see around you, for the nature you see around you. And you distinguish that from which you cannot control versus what you can. The serenity prayer is beautiful, isn't it?
I'm going to agree that is, the almost the foundation. That is a part. What there's more. What else?
Yeah, I mean that's just the natural order.
What about the freedom?
From my perspective, at least.
Freedom, free will. Free will exists in humanity if you rethink something. The body is designed, including the brain, is designed to have a default response to any situation that it may come across. So that default response you don't have any control of. But if you rethink something, you get to figure out what all the options are and you get to choose something different. And that's
free
free
won't.
will.
So you're saying your free will is kind of like a free won't. In other words, if you have time to deliberate on it, you can kind of change your mind.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
That
I would
is
describe that
that,
as
that
I would
corresponds
describe
to
that as
what we see.
consensual will.
Free will is freedom.
True freedom, yes.
That
Yeah,
right
free
there in
from
Genesis.
free from constraint. Like there's so many ways, different ways to talk about it. Like, I have these free will debates at least once a week, and a lot of people will be talking about libertarian free will, which is to say that you're not in the causal chain, so to speak. Like, you just out of a vacuum, you can make decisions to do X, Y, or Z. But to me, I would take it even deeper to say, well, you're still stuck with those options of X, Y, and Z. So you're kind of determined to choose between those options. And then the way you choose are going to be determined by the things you want, your personal goals. And so freedom and unfreedom are sort of the same thing in a way. It's like I could say, well, if I could only go back in time when I was, 2 years ago, I would decide not to take this job or something like that. And it's like, I don't really think I could, even if I could go in a time machine, because then I would be bringing in the influence of the future me to the past me. If I just went to the past me, I would just act exactly as I did. I couldn't have done otherwise. I would have done exactly the thing I did because I had no information of how it was all going to play out. If I did, I'd probably want to do something different,
That's
you couldn't have done
compiling more.
otherwise.
Right.
That's
You
just
can't do
more and
otherwise.
more stuff thrown on top of it that trying to dilute it. Okay, you're free. You can do this stuff. It's right there in the Bible in Genesis. It is a gift to you. You're free to make of your life whatever you wish, and you can make the best of your circumstances. Don't even try. Oh, you got free will because your circumstances. No, you're free. And that's where all these Eastern philosophies fail. That's why they got to copy everything, from us, and
They
stay
didn't
creative.
copy.
But they came earlier, though.
They came earlier. They got an abacus, but we got thermonuclear weapons now, don't we? So
Aren't we
They came
supposed
up
to be
with
better
gunpowder
than
first.
right makes right?
What did we have when they had abacuses?
I don't know, scratchy pads on rocks. But
Well, if you take a look at their population sizes over time and their ability to sustain a healthy environment for their population, you'll see something different, I think.
no, you won't. It's monkeys. It's 1,000 monkeys and typewriters. Eventually, they're going to get something right. So
Why isn't that us?
good for them.
Why isn't that the West, too?
Because the West is freedom. We can become creative, which is one thing you will not find in the East.
You
They're
don't?
the least creative people.
That's
They
not
will
true, man.
stumble across something
The least
eventually.
creative people.
And there's no reason to blow that up like, oh, wow, they discovered gunpowder. Whoop-de-damn-do. We actually put it to really good use.
Fundamentally change this world.
Well, okay, if you say so. I mean, I tend to think that both societies developed independently for the most part. There's a few. I mean, the Silk Road did exist, and there were at least 3 trails on it. But
well, they did, but it took the Western society to figure out, instead of using gunpowder to send up rockets and flashy things and kill each other, we could blow up rocks and quarry and build dams and all this other useful things. We're creative.
So were they.
That's free will.
So were they.
And that's what the Bible espouses. It's your freedom.
Why do we care about what the Bible says?
Quite frankly,
there's no free will in the Bible. There's no free will.
Oh, really? Explain that.
All right. I have an analogy that I like to fall back on here that I've called the boxed maze. It's like if you take an entity and put it in a box that contains a maze that has one exit or the other, the entity has to choose one exit or the other. So that's not a free will choice. That's a determined choice. And that's basically the premise of Abrahamic theism. It's either you choose God or you don't. So there's no real freedom there.
Why isn't the 2 choices a freedom?
Because it's constrained to a predetermined outcome.
Why does freedom not have to be constrained? I mean, we're all constrained by something. But why does free will have to be that invasive?
If you're constrained, are you free?
Yeah.
Dave's more eloquent.
Yes, I am. If I can rethink something, I'm free. I have choices. The question is, why does freedom have to involve everything? Okay, why does it have to have no constraints on it? I don't understand that.
Well, because if you're constrained, then you're not free. It's just basic conflict.
Why is that so? I mean, you just keep saying that. Why is that so?
I mean, I can break out dictionary definitions if you want.
What makes you think that there's only the 2
some definitions
choices?
need to be changed?
I mean, I'm kind of curious on what
claim of free will. So we don't actually have free will.
Because I'm not sure exactly what everyone's position is. I know it sounds like some people, or the majority of us, are maybe compatibilists. I don't know, some of them are libertarian free will. For me, I am a determinist, so I'm not sure if I'm in the majority here or not.
I think compatibilism is just a form of determinism. For me, I think that we can make free choices, but we don't have free will, because we have to define, what do you mean by will? I have a will to eat when I'm hungry. Am I free from that? No. Am I free from my will to breathe? No. Just how far, but Dave brings up a good question. Like, it depends on what we mean by freedom. Like, why does freedom have to involve everything? Like eating, breathing, the time of century you were born in, the language you grew up speaking. Why does it have to involve all of that stuff? Well, it depends on what context we're talking about. So I think we all exist within a context. We all exist with priors that led up to who we are today. So we're not free of that, but we may be free to make certain decisions inside that framework. Possibly we could talk about that, and maybe come up with some way to say we're free to choose between A and B, but that freedom would reflect our wants, and I don't think we're free to decide our wants, are we?
Scott, the thing is, determinists,
I agree with you.
those people, they put themselves in a box. They forcefully limit their options, and many reasons why they do this.
What are we limiting?
That's what cuts them off, and that's why they think they don't have free will. Oh, I only have 2 choices. Oh no, actually, you have a lot more.
I've heard that before. I've kind of
feel
come
I
to the
think
conclusion I don't really care about people like that. If they look at it in those terms, then they're really not adding anything to my philosophy at all. They're just speaking their psychology. And who cares about somebody's psychological flapdoodle? I don't care. For me, I'm just looking at the philosophy behind it all. Like when we talk about freedom, what are we talking about? When we talk about will, what are we talking about? And then we can kind of discuss it from there.
yeah, I agree
But
with
yeah,
Can
you.
I
you're
add
right. There's
something?
a lot of people that want to limit
I
themselves and not be
I
accountable at
want to.
all.
May I add something, please?
Yeah.
I just want to say
History
though,
is
like,
very long and big. History is a big thing. Time is a big thing. You only have free will in the now, and now is a very short time.
That's contextual.
I was just going to say, we should allow us, Al, to let the determinists to speak for themselves, because
Yeah.
I don't see how I'm trying to limit myself here.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like he's referring to some determinists, and that's great. I mean, there's a lot of people who are just speaking out of their psychological, mumbo jumbo. They'll say whatever they have to say to justify whatever it is they want to justify. Like I could say, I could have not, killed that person, but I did it anyways. Because I mean, after all, I don't have free will. There's people like that. And they don't mean anything to me because they're not adding anything to the philosophy, to the argument one way or the other. They're speaking about what they want to do. They want to kill somebody and they want to not be accountable. So they're just reinforcing determinism at that point.
Like saying, yeah, we break the law because we speed. Oh, wait, is that free will? No, that ain't free will. It's just, you just do whatever you want to.
Yeah. But
So that's
laws
why.
exist
Yeah.
as a way to manipulate determinism. It's like we humans, if we notice that we humans like to avoid pain and at all costs we like to avoid inconvenience, then if you present a situation where if you do X, you're gonna get a bad outcome for yourself, then most people are going, because they're determined to avoid bad things, bad outcomes, then they're going to fall in line with the law that you imposed on them. Does this in some way prove free will? I don't think so. It just for me, it sort of reinforces a deterministic framework, if anything.
No, you're right. And in Genesis, that I created everything and I gave it to you. And now I step back. You can make the heaven or hell on earth that you please. And, well, that's kind of what we do. Take your side.
Yeah.
But all that's based on predetermined qualifiers, sin and all that.
Well, there is no interference. There is nobody putting the box around you.
We're all
I would like to add the idea. I'd like to add the idea that dualism gives you both determinism and free will. Because in dualism, the now is you, and history is the nature or the thing outside of you. So you do have free will with respect to your choices, but not to everything. The dualism has two things in it. Saying there is no free will and pure determinism is monistic in its very nature, isn't it?
Okay. Let's rephrase this. Do you have the ability or not to manipulate your environment?
Yes, I do.
And you can choose. Free will is a choice.
Yes. I can choose my environment. I can manipulate it quite a bit.
I'd say you should define what you mean by free will. But, yeah.
It's a choice. That's all.
But even in that, you're still limited to certain constraints. You can't manipulate your entire environment based on sheer will alone.
Did an iPhone exist 30 years ago? Did an iPhone exist 30 years ago?
No, I don't know.
No,
Don't
it
keep track
didn't.
of it.
It's 15 years old. A little older. But needless to say, here nor there, it didn't exist. Well, it does now. Was that determined?
No,
Yeah.
it's from the
Well,
choices
no,
that we made all along the way.
That's not what I meant.
It is now determined, but then it was not. Okay, there was a point when I could have chosen to do completely different things. And I made choices. So I made those choices, it set my track, and then it gave me a different set of choices than if I had chosen something else.
There you go. It's all free will is.
Yeah, free
Well,
will
if
is
you talk
choice.
to, well, if you talk
So
to
constrained
someone
by-
like Albert Einstein or Brian Greene or Michio Kaku or Sean Carroll, if you ask them, they'll say that all of these events happened already. They're already there. These realities are already there. The iPhone was there all along for eternity because we live
That's
in a
an
block universe.
that's an interesting concept. Unfortunately, the laws of nature beg to differ.
Yeah,
Okay.
on one level, yeah, they do because we live in a causative universe where there's cause and effects. But what they'll tell you is if you look at a more wider perspective, let's say you go down to the level of quantum mechanics, causality doesn't really exist as we understand it at all. There's quantum non-causality, there's entanglement, there's non-locality, everything just exists. And we as experiencers, somehow we live outside of that causative universe. Somehow that non-causal universe, somehow we experience the universe as serially happening, one thing after another, leading to another thing, leading to another thing. And
Mhm.
so our concepts are simply limiting ourselves because of our ignorance. In other words, we're so limited in our minds that we don't really see the big picture, which is not surprising, being that we're always learning new things about the universe. But what they'll say is it's even worse than that. It's like fundamentally, there's actually none of this stuff that we think that we take on face value. And even stuff that gives us progress, even stuff that gives us technology and useful for, even that stuff is just a useful illusion, so to speak. And that, oddly enough, is kind of in line with a lot of the Buddhist teachings as well.
That's like the whatever, the college student talking about the effects of THC on the mind and how it interacts and does this, that, and the other. It's like, dude, I whatever, man. You got some weed you want to smoke? Okay, if not, shut up.
Yeah,
How does this apply to whatever? What is this
real life,
really
right? Yeah,
affect on our
I
lives?
understand
Come
that.
on,
That
man.
see, that's where me and Dave kind of got to in our debate, and where I kind of conceded that part was because it's undeniable. If you really break it down like you just did, Al, it kind of like all falls apart at some level. The only thing that really means anything is our relationships with each other and into the world, right? If I jump off a cliff, I'm going to die. I don't care how non-dual I want to believe things are.
Yeah,
If
this
I
call.
don't, you know what I mean? And so that's always the big thing about idealism versus materialism. Like, they've got the upper hand. I mean, I always admit that. Like, the materialists are kind of right on that. Like, I don't care how much you want to believe in non-dualism, you ain't jumping in front of that train. Okay. So stop it. But if we're
Agreed.
going to talk metaphysics, I think we can talk that way because now we're backed up by science and philosophy and other things. So we can kind of talk about it that way. But I think a lot of people are not really that interested to go that deep with it. And they
Yeah.
just want to feel like, all I know is there's you and there's me and there's this and there's that. And what else do we need to talk about?
It's really cool to explore. It really
Yeah,
is.
it's fun. It's
And
fun.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
actually, it is beneficial to us because we have I don't know, we're special creatures and we have the ability to do that. So it's like, why the hell not?
Right. Right.
Can I say one thing on will before we move on from
Yeah,
that?
sure thing.
So I think a better way to describe our will is being contextual rather than free, because we only have the freedom to choose to make choices based on the context in front of us. but there's much of life that's predetermined, that we have no control over. So it's not exactly accurate to describe it as free. It's contextual.
And just to add,
I could agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like for me, it's like there's the concept of like every event or state of affairs, has been determined by preceding events, in accordance with the laws of nature. And at least when I'm trying to be as, what's the term I'm looking for? Consistent with as possible with my views. It's like, well, that would include human actions and choices. So it's just like, perhaps it would be, there's a freedom in a sense, but to me, that's not the type of freedom we're talking about. The freedom to make choices. It's like that's not free will, at least as the way that David has put it.
Yeah. See, on idealism, on analytical natural idealism, free will is kind of an illusion, because the greater mind is what's determining everything. And even the greater mind itself is not a subject as we might think of it. Like the greater mind is just, the mind of being, or the beingness, the ultimate being. It's like, it can't help but to be what it is. And so when minds come out, we talk about this disassociation of the creation, the things that come out of the universe are disassociated. This is just a reflection of the nature that we're determined, so, we're all part of a context. We're all part of a relation. We can't go out of our relations, causation. Like even in science, they talk about how, maybe causation isn't fundamental. Maybe what's more fundamental than causes are relations, and relations exist at mathematical points. And it's just how they relate to each other is what determines what's really real. It's just that we experience the causes, and we think and we mistake the causes for the real thing. And in fact, that's just an interpretation the brain makes, but actually everything is just related to other things as one big giant reality, some matrix. And so all these different, possibilities just actuate. And, to talk about when did they actuate? Why did they actuate? Those are probably bad questions at that level of reality. They only make sense when we're talking about the human experience. Why did such and such step on my foot? Well, there's a reason why he did it. Maybe he didn't see you, or maybe he's just an asshole. But you can figure that shit out, and then you can deal with it accordingly and move on with life. Everything is that way. Where that doesn't really make sense, maybe in quantum, theory, or some greater fundamental way of looking at the world.
Oh, absolutely. You'll find a way to argue anything. We're humans. That's that is the thing that we are the best at.
Yes. Remember, my message is always, you are just the universe arguing with itself on the internet.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's all we are.
And I feel attacked, Scott.
Yeah, me too. It's called self-deprecating humor.
Then it's like you can look at it in a positive or negative way. What do you know? Contradictory. I find it hilarious. And other people, oh, I'm so offended.
Yep. Exactly.
I do wish we had Patty Pat here.
I know, that's what I was kind of hoping, that he would jump in, because this is a subject that's right up his alley,
Yes, we are to call him a Trinitarian from now on.
Exactly.
Is that the fellow that was on the Easter topic?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah, he's a rare show. He rarely comes in.
Yeah, he'd swear up and down he's a homosexual and some kind of the weirdo, but no, he's actually a really good guy, believe it or not.
Yeah, me and Patty, man, I always call him Patty Poo, and he calls me Dub Shit. And we go back and forth on Facebook and argue about Christianity, like to ad nauseum. Like we never give up. Like he's
No,
constantly.
he won't quit out. He won't. I mean, I beat that guy for 15 years. We're like, all right, screw it. At this point, we might as well be friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's God's little soldier. That's for sure.
Although he lost his mind when I became a Mormon.
Yeah. He doesn't know how to deal with that. He doesn't seem to know how to deal with Eastern views either that well. Because I put up a post I think yesterday on the principle of unattachment. I think I put a video up or something on Fight on the Fence, and it was talking about unattachment. And then he came in and was like, "Oh, so more contradictory concepts like you're unattached, but as soon as you unattach, you just attach to some other belief. Like unattachment is bad. That's just another attachment you've created for yourself." It's like, no, that's not the point. I don't think you understand what unattachment really means, and we just go back and forth like that forever.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll tell you what, man. If I don't know, I can't do this because of my reputation. But if you want to create another group, because everything in Fence has just been, man, you want to talk about kicking a dead donkey in the mouth or whatever it's called. Man, that's all it is there. That's just
Victor
really,
seems
really tiring. It's not like the two Daves here that have really good views. I'm gonna
Yeah.
call the Pandias professor from here on out.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Professor David.
you want to create a new one that actually has something of value to add and some good conversations that we can bounce off each other.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm all in.
Well, that's how it always starts, isn't it? It's kind of like a horror movie. The first 5 minutes, you're like, oh, nothing bad's going to happen. Everybody seems happy. And by the end of the movie, everybody's fucking dead.
Yeah, let's try to keep politics and all the racial shit to a minimum, please.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Could I make
But
a suggestion?
yeah, sure. Go right
We
ahead.
could
Please.
rotate through various philosophies. So we pick up one philosophy from the East and one chapter of something else from the West, and then go back and forth over several different philosophies and discuss chapters of their various texts, like the Upanishad. It's hard to say. Upanishad. The Upanishad.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's
it's
because we
an
don't eat
amazing
our
thing.
food with pickup
Upanishads.
sticks.
The Upanishads.
Yeah.
I agree with that because I think ignorance of Eastern philosophies isn't just a Pat thing. I mean, that's a West thing. We love to think we're the only ones that have good ideas. So
We're the shit,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, get Sophia in there and everything.
Yeah, we can get Sophie in here.
So
Let all old grudges be buried.
Yeah. I'll carry
So,
the shovel.
to circle back to the topic,
Yeah,
cultural Christianity.
please.
So what would be the base essence of Christianity? It would be sacrifice, right?
The sacrifice, death, and resurrection.
Virtue.
I
Monism.
lost my point.
Go ahead, David. What was it?
The base of Christianity is monism. The idea that it's all in your head.
Point.
It's the
Well, not just
conflation
that,
of
but like just the overall message. But I lost my point anyway. Hopefully it'll come back.
the basis of Christianity is realizing the Easter Bunny is Jesus's persona.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, one thing that they always tell me is that, the first and main important thing you have to admit is that you're a sinner. Once you can admit that you're a sinner, then you're in need of salvation. So then the next belief is that Jesus was divine or was God, and he died and was resurrected on the third day. And if you believe that, then you can be free of your sin and be forgiven. This doesn't mean that you're going to be sinless as far as your actions, but you'll be sinless in the eyes of God. You'll be, unblemished, as they say in Revelations. And And so it's all about seeing yourself as less than, in needing something, and then they sell you the solution, which is salvation and forgiveness through the blood of the Lamb. Who the Lamb, stands for the sacrificial lambs that the Jews used to offer to Yahweh. So he's kind of like the ultimate lamb, if you will, to forgive you of your sins. So that's all you need to do. And I think, Caleb, didn't we both submit ourselves to Jesus on one of these shows? Remember when Dave Rogers asked us if you were a sinner and if Jesus was the way out of your sin and condemnation, would you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior? Me and Caleb both said yes, of course.
I mean, yeah, if it's true.
Yeah, that was the thing. If it's a big if. Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna tell you something really weird that happened to me yesterday. Here we go with these crazy experiences. So, for my laptop crashed about 3 weeks ago, and I've been on my cell phone to do these shows. So I've been without my computer. It's been driving me crazy. I got to buy a new laptop, at the worst time. And I've been coming in here every day fooling with my laptop, and it's just absolutely dead. It will not crank up. Won't do anything. There's no power light on it. There's nothing, even if I plug it up. So it's just gone, man. It just won't turn on. And then yesterday I was in my room last night and I was just playing around and I said, you know what, Jesus, if you're for real, resurrect my laptop. I was just so frustrated. It's like, Jesus, if you are real and you resurrect my laptop, I will believe in you. Just as a joke. Push the button, the damn thing came on.
All right, Scott.
So now what do I do? Does that make me a liar?
Well, you were sinning before that, and
Right.
and once you repented to God, He forgave you.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
no more porn.
So I'm like, now I understand why Jesus doesn't perform miracles anymore, because it's like he performed that miracle for me and it still hasn't convinced me. So I'm like, it could be, well, I'm sitting here thinking it could be coincidence. It could be the devil. It could be some other thing. It could be the people in the Matrix fucking with me. It could be all kinds of things. So maybe that's why he doesn't do miracles, because he already knows what we're going to say.
No, hell no. After like the New Testament, Jesus, Jesus don't have much to do with it. He was the last messenger, but yeah, God got tired of this stuff. He's like, man, I ain't Sodom and Gomorrah and your asses anymore. Y'all need to figure this stuff out.
Wait,
know,
don't
I'm
you know
gonna-
that Muhammad
I'm gonna
was
go
the
get
last messenger?
drunk on ambrosia with the angels. Screw y'all.
But don't you know
So
Muhammad?
the basic theme is behind Christianity is essentially sacrifice, right? Stop being a shitty person. Stop sinning. Find your better way. But the same is true in Buddhism.
Yeah,
But it's all through observation and self-awareness, rather than submitting to an external authority. So I think there's a bit better merit there than Christianity.
All right, Jordan Peterson.
I agree with Dave there, because it's like why I believe in this concept that you are a broken person, like when you can do all the sacrifice and be a good person without that, what seems to me would be very unhealthy for a growing mind.
Threats of punishment and the eternal hellfire, eternal damnation.
Hey,
like that, all that stuff is mentally damaging.
Can I play devil's advocate on that?
Hold on.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so I'm gonna act like the Banana Man pastor. I think you might know who I'm talking about.
No.
Crockett, Ray Crockett.
Yeah, Ray Comfort.
Ray Comfort.
Ray Uncomfort. And I'll say, have you ever lied before?
Everyone has.
So that makes you a what?
It makes me a human.
Yes, and humans are what? Liars?
But But here's the
Many
thing:
things.
isn't all that dependent on the age of accountability? I would argue that most of us have lied before we even knew what lying was.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
that
just
means you were
you know,
born a liar.
We didn't even know what
Why
it
does the one
was.
lie determine your status? Why aren't you a 99.99% truth?
Because he'll say that,
Honest.
well, if the Bible's true, you were born a liar, and so the fact that you told that lie is consistent with that claim. And so he'll bring up other things besides just lies. He'll say, have you ever hurt someone's feelings intentionally? Have you ever cussed anybody out? Or have you ever
you ever
made your
stolen
mommy
anything?
angry? Stole
Yeah, but
anything?
why are
Yeah.
the one-offs the key? Why aren't the average behavior the key?
Because we have an ideal standard and we're not children anymore. Children lie because that's their limited interpretation of the world.
Why can't the standard be written so that the ideal standard be written so that we are what we are, as opposed to some other idea, some other thing?
It is, but there's this. I hate the Christian words, the sacrifice. I don't know. Those are only catchwords. It's work. You have to work towards this. You build yourself up even as a child and as an adult, and you strive for the ideal standard.
Yeah.
But if we're all born with God's laws and
I hope
morals in
we're
our
all
hearts,
I hope we're all being
what
honest
does
at
that say
this
about
point.
God?
We're all
Well, there's
probably
three
above
ideal
30.
standards that come out of nature very easily: tournament, compassion, and camouflage. And tournament people often use camouflage.
Explain
So
that a little bit.
there's
Okay.
three
You
standards.
mean like subterfuge? Do you mean subterfuge
Subterfuge,
when
yeah.
you say camouflage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Go ahead.
subterfuge or something of that nature. Yes.
Okay.
If you're going to win, if you're a tournament, if you're a bird and you're a pretty bird because you want to be the prettiest bird, so you get to mate, that's tournament. You got to have your horns. You can fight another deer. That's tournament. In all of these cases, it's competition for the right to mate. Okay, is one valid evolutionary strategy, survival strategy. Another survival strategy is compassion and telling the truth. There are some cases where the male actually spends more calories than the female in the rearing of the young, because once the child is born, the male does everything else.
Oh, shit, that's
Yeah, and then
just
there's
making it you
camouflage,
spend more
the ability to
calories.
hide, to not be available to an attacker, which is a third one. Those are all three valid strategies found in nature. So why can't we say they're all right? All three of them are right.
What's wrong with them?
So
That's
that
what
brings
it
me.
is. And there's nothing wrong with them all under the right conditions. Under the right conditions, every single one of them applies.
Well,
So I'm not a liar. I'm mostly an honest person, but I have lied.
I think lying is rooted in survival traits.
Yeah, the prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, how do you get out of that
Stealing?
one?
Yeah, the same goes with stealing.
You just worked yourself in a box.
Yeah. Yeah, don't
so
tell Ray Comfort that. Don't tell Ray Comfort that. He won't be very comfortable. He's not gonna like that.
He's one of the worst. I confront his page all the time.
So the ideal standard probably should be something like, if we know morality is the natural characteristic of trying to live in large communities, of being able to live in a large community, then why don't we consider that the real ideal standard is based on several factors? Because you're determinist, okay, you happen to be evaluated at the level 4 on Maslow's hierarchy. You happen to be at Erickson's 5th stage of life generation. You're a Kohlberg's stage 2 moralist. Then you can determine how much you should rely. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Yeah.
All those people never espouse anything about virtue. There's your
No.
ideal standard. That is virtue, to be virtuous. And a lot of people can't even explain what virtue is. And no, we're not going around the table. But
Right.
look, it is an ideal standard. And the damnedest thing is, all these people, I got this idea. That's pretty simple.
Have you ever spoken to Cy 10 Bruggencate, Al?
Oh boy.
You want
Who?
to talk about standards? You want to really go there?
Are
Talk to
you
that
trying
guy.
to get me drunk? You're getting into an internet fight with somebody?
Cy 10 Bruggencate will try to eat
I'd
you
love,
alive if you start talking
yeah,
about that stuff, man.
No, just
I'd
message
love to
me.
debate him too.
Tag me somewhere in a post, okay?
Yeah, you'll love it. David knows what I'm talking about. I came to David with
Oh
that
yeah.
Cy 10 argument, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I felt so cringy doing it, to be honest. Like, I was really trying to be as serious about that as possible, but
Well,
God, it was cringy.
you just tell him, Mr. Saitan, that somebody's going to come in that doesn't approve of people that eat with pickup sticks.
Yeah, I don't think he'd like you very much, Al, to be quite
Probably
honest.
not.
I don't think he understands that.
Kind of like Logan.
Yeah. Logan.
What's wrong with
Well,
eating with sticks? Don't you do that with forks?
right.
Look, I'm not knocking it. When in Rome, right? If I could flip a shrimp and catch it, that'd be cool.
I mean, here in the States, people eat fried chicken with their hands.
You're
Hands that
damn
they wipe
right.
their asses with.
Right.
Hands that they wipe their asses with and sometimes don't wash.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people wipe their asses with poison ivy, but we don't call that an ideal standard.
I'm just saying.
Shut up in the mountains now. Nobody. Oh yeah, never mind.
Well, come down here to Appalachia sometime.
I'm in Appalachia, dude. I swear to God, the
See,
Appalachian Trail is like literally 2 miles away from where I live.
Let's see. What part of
See,
Appalachia?
my family is originally from West Virginia, so I'm very
Oh,
clued in on outhouse culture and all that.
I'm in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Okay.
Left
by.
Florida because it's concrete paradise. Get back to nature, like Professor Dave would say.
I think Logan heard you, Al. Here he is.
Logan and I love
His
each
ears
other.
are burning.
We just
Yeah.
love to shit and fight with each other.
Yeah. I've had Logan on the show. We were talking about the transgender topic. But what I like about Cy 10, one of his things that he said to me one time was we're talking about knowledge and standards and stuff, and I know my standard or whatever. And he said, he goes, yeah, well, let me ask you this. Suppose someone asked you what the speed limit was outside of your house on your street. What would you say? And I'd say, well, it's actually 25 miles an hour. And he goes, okay, so that's the standard for your driving outside of your house on that street for everybody. It's 25 miles an hour, right? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, and you know this? And I'm like, yeah, I was just looking at the sign yesterday when I came in. He's like, okay, well, how do you know that someone hasn't taken that down and changed the sign when you weren't looking? And I'm like, well, I don't really know that. And he goes, right. So you want to backtrack and change your mind what you just told me about what your standards are? So that's his whole argument for why atheists can't have standards. He says, me, on the other hand, I know what my standards are because they're written in that old Bible, tried and tested, unchanging word of God.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Oh God.
he's neuristic. He likes to argue for the sake of arguing. Okay.
Right. Yeah, he's a nut. And he's got a lot of energy with that shit too.
Okay, so he's another Patty Yarnell. Great.
Yes, there you go. Kind of
Y'all are
like
gonna
him.
Who's
My
Who is
liver
this
is gonna
again?
be like a basketball by the time I get through with these two. But
Yeah.
okay.
Cy 10 Bruggencate, he's from Canada. He's
Oh,
Oh
okay.
Jesus
kind of like a
Christ!
He's kind of like a Darth Dawkins character.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah, he's
snowballs and
another
we
priest
got
up.
weapons.
Yeah.
Ugh. Canadians. They have the most facetious fuck you you've ever heard.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Let me see if I can pull up
I'm
and
trying to
share
be
a
a good
video of.
Mormon, and you all are just like ruining this.
I know that's why I wanna show you Cy 10 because he does YouTube stuff too. So I want to show you how he actually confronted Penn Jillette in Las Vegas a few years ago.
Oh,
And
geez, he's popular
yeah,
then.
he's got a lot of energy, man. I'm telling you, he don't mind arguing. But let me present this just to
There's
get you
no.
a taste of it.
The first video I saw of him is when he debated Matt Dillahunty.
Oh,
Oh,
geez,
Matt
that
killed
came
him.
out.
Matt killed his ass.
Oh, Matt Dillahunty's hilarious. What a moron.
Yeah, he's a moron.
Very excited to bring by the way. I've done
Your name again? I mean, I don't agree with all of his views.
the public debate. Have you ever engaged a Christian presuppositionalist?
This
A
this guy.
presuppositionalist, because I don't debate evidence with atheists. What I would say is God is a necessary precondition for intelligibility. Because you have used a number of concepts when you discuss with Ray that I say atheism cannot account for. No, we can't. Okay, so for instance, when you say something is true and when you use logic, you're borrowing from my world. And I'll give you guys very, very simply. Logic is universal. Logic is not made of matter. Logic does not change. God is universal. God is not made of matter. God does not change. So, according to my worldview, I have a worldview that makes sense of this conversation.
Yes, I know you do.
But your worldview doesn't.
That's the nightmare.
Well, here's the problem.
That's the nightmare.
When you call something a nightmare, you're appealing to a standard that you say that we deviate from. And the problem is with atheism, you cannot have that standard.
It's a nightmare. It's a horrible nightmare that you're just.
No, when you say something is horrible, you're appealing to a standard. Is that not fair? See, because what I'm saying is that every word out of your mouth exposes the fact that you really do know that God exists. For instance, one of your.
Do you agree with the sentence, God is good?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in order to say God is good,
Yes.
you've already stated that good exists outside of God.
No.
Yes,
No,
you
okay,
have.
well, the question is then what? How? Now, I'll flesh it out. Good is according to the character and nature of God. He is good by nature. He does not say what is good, and he does not have a standard above him.
What if?
So let me give you a quick example. Why is stealing wrong, Christian? Not because it makes people mad. Stealing is wrong because God is not a thief. And I can have an absolute standard. Why is adultery wrong? Not because it destroys marriages.
So you're saying that there is a standard of good beyond God.
No, I'm saying that he is the standard.
Then God isn't good.
No, I'm saying he
God
is the
is
standard
God.
of goodness.
Well, then that's a tautology. That means
Well,
nothing.
there's not a problem with that. I'm saying that I have a
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I know there's no problem.
Okay, now let's put it this way. Between the two of us, I have a standard by which I can say something is wrong.
So you're talking about moral relativity, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying without
God, there's nothing but relativity.
Well, if morality can be
Morals and
stipulated,
ethics.
anybody is free to stipulate their own. So I'm saying that
My
but not
God.
only that, it's worse than that, because every word out of your mouth, no, listen to this.
I'm listening.
Every word out of your mouth assumes God, because you assume what's called induction, the principle of induction. You assume the future will be like the past, because you're about to utter sounds into the ether. Is that not fair?
No, it's not fair.
Okay, well, you know the problem of induction. Have you ever? Okay, so on what basis do you assume the future will be like the past?
I think I understand your point.
No, the thing is, I've always seen you as a very reasonable person who would be willing to have a
That's kind of
discussion
you
like
to
this.
say.
No, I have. And I thought that, in having a discussion like this, you would want to talk about it and not.
I think I know.
Now,
I think
I don't want to be insulting to you at all. I don't want to be insulting.
Thank you.
No, what I'm saying is, you don't look well. Are you ill?
I have AIDS.
You have AIDS?
No,
No, I'm not serious. Or you just have lost a lot of weight.
I lost a lot of weight to help you.
Okay, and so have I. Okay, that's anyhow. Good talk with you. I would love to.
So yeah, that's Cy.
Listening to that gave me AIDS. So.
God damn. See, God is
Sorry.
good. God is good without the extra O.
I was taking notes, and I mean, typing with my thumbs, is hard. Let me see. Logic dots, he will not elaborate on that. So therefore he fails. God of the Gaps is very influential with his over-talking and projecting by force, and his overall demeanor is an heuristic.
Hmm. Yeah. So when you talk about standards, he'd love to get into that with you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'd love
I
to
believe my
sit down
God
with him.
exists, and so do you.
I'd love to sit down with him face to face.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a trip. But yeah, that's what's me and Dave kind of had that debate a couple weeks ago. I was trying to act like side 10 Rugen Kate
Excuse me.
best I could, and it was cringy.
Scott, you don't have the drill sergeant in you, more than whereas
Mm-mm.
that guy does.
Yeah, he definitely does.
I would
Had
like
me
to
on
say,
my heels, though.
I would like
That
to say
was
I've really
good.
enjoyed this
I'll
conversation.
try it. Oh yeah, I enjoyed it too, man.
Yeah,
Um,
All right.
I've had a great time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Doctor, I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to
Same here.
another one. And we'll catch up on in the meantime online, all right?
Yeah, we'll do that. So, what topics do you guys want to broach? I'm kind of looking for stuff for next weekend. Would y'all like to discuss?
I'd really love to go over pantheism and deism with Dr. Dave.
Okay, let's
Okay.
do it.
There was one aspect I wanted to touch on cultural Christianity today that we didn't get a
Okay,
chance to get to.
please do.
What
Yeah.
was the adoption of the adoption and promotion of eugenics by a
Ooh.
Christian majority in this country, and how that um, influenced and inspired Hitler to take on the same
Mm,
sort of measures, same sort of racial laws and everything. So I mean, when we think about cultural Christianity, we have to take that into account as well.
yeah,
I've
and
done
abortion.
this. I've done that one before. Ugh. All right,
You
if you
know,
don't have anyone else, yeah, I'll chime in.
go right ahead, man.
No,
Th-
that's a topic.
That's a good topic for next week. I would love to
Yeah,
join you
we can
guys
say that
next
for another
week.
time.
Okay, because I've had a really good time, but I
Okay,
need to
man.
go.
Yeah, it was nice
Sure,
meeting you.
you got it,
So
man. Have a good one, Dave. I
have a
appreciate you
great
joining.
one. Thank
Yes,
you very
sir.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb?
Hmm? Yes.
I can't send a zappy through the phone. Any topic ideas?
Let's see. I don't know. Is morality subjective, objective? I don't know if we have. I mean, I feel like that topic is more interesting if we have a theist on. But,
Yeah, I was hoping we could get Patrick to jump in.
Yeah, I'd like to get in on that as well. But I have a case for naturalistic objective morality
ooh, I would be
that I could make.
interested to hear that.
Everyone
Oh,
loves to
As
dogpile the
as a
Christians.
subjectivist, yeah, like
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, I'll actually do a
not,
deep dive on the Mormons if you want.
oh god,
yeah.
all right.
So we got three good subjects right there. So we can do pantheism versus deism, objective morality, um, and what was the last one? I just forgot what you just said. Mormonism. Mormonism.
Mormons.
Hey
Yes.
guys, I got a pamphlet.
I can see you riding around in your little bicycle and tie and like those young elders,
the magic underwear.
the
The
magic
magic
underwear.
Hey, that keeps you warm in the winter, trust me.
I'm sure it does out in Utah.
Hmm.
Does in Tennessee too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dave, where in Appalachia are you?
I'm in Georgia. I'm in northeastern Georgia.
Georgia. Oh, okay.
Oh, so you're like in shit, what is that called? The valley there. Yeah.
It's
Piedmont.
I forget what they call it. It's
Yeah,
like
you're
a
right.
plateau really. It's the stage in between the mountains and the
Yeah.
swamps.
Piedmont Valley. I used to have some property in Thompson.
I've only been down here about a year and a half now. I
Oh,
like it.
yeah, Thompson's the middle of nowhere, so nobody knows where it's at.
I'm actually pretty close to Atlanta.
Yeah, Augusta's on one side,
Atlanta.
Atlanta's on the other, and then yeah, right in the middle, the good part.
Wow. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. We're almost 3 hours, so we had a really good conversation, man. It's been pretty fleshed out, I think.
Yep, plug in the phones.
Yeah, man. Plug our phones back up. Let's get back to whatever it is we're doing this weekend.
All right, guys, y'all have fun.
Yeah, man. Y'all be good. Thank you, everybody. Like and subscribe if you haven't, folks. And we are out.
Take care, everyone.
All right, man. Have a
Yeah.
good one, David. Later on, Caleb.